Well, in a season, and you could probably say an era that IU fans largely want to forget, they certainly will want to remember that second half for a long, long time. It was one of the better 20-minute performances you will see in Assembly Hall, especially when you consider the team on the visiting bench. Good Monday morning to you. I'm Kevin Bowen. Corbin Lingenfelter, thank you for little Don Fisher to lead us off here on this Monday morning. Mark Dykton, after today, we will be combine bound the rest of the week over at the Convention Center. So Tuesday through Friday, we'll be over there. Chris Ballard scheduled to join us coming up on Wednesday morning. I think Shane Steichen will be on with John that afternoon, on with Jake that afternoon. And then John will have Lou Anarumo. I think that is Tuesday. So we'll keep you updated combine-wise as one of the busier weeks of the year descends upon Indianapolis with great weather on the horizon. And back-to-back for the Pacers tonight as they continue their nice start here to the second half of the season. It is Nikola Jokic in his lone visit to Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Boys, good morning.
Good morning to you. First of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
Second of all, thank you for bringing nice weather, because you picked a hell of a time to leave for Florida, and then you're bringing some nice mid-50s with you the rest of the week.
I am, and I'm also bringing, I've noticed as I scoot my chair up here to the desk on this Monday morning, the gut hits the desk a little bit quicker than I remembered.
Well, it's all the rum runners you're having, all the seafood.
There used to be like a little pocket of air that I could feel somewhat decent about. But, yeah, when I put on the sweatpants this morning, let's just say a little bit more snug than I had remembered.
Diet starts tomorrow, right?
Diet, indeed, starts tomorrow.
Just as the combine starts and all the free food is hanging out.
Perfect for that. John Herrick, part of the IU Radio Network. You hear him pregame and halftime with Don Fisher and Eric Sewer. He's going to join us coming up here at 8 o'clock. Certainly a ton to get to from the scene in Assembly Hall, and what a tale of two halves yesterday, and certainly questions in very different directions all of a sudden for Indiana and Purdue as we get to the close of the regular season coming up. 2 weeks left. Again, the Pacers tonight, they've got the Nuggets wire to wire yesterday. I thought they handled their business. I thought that was one of Tyrese Halliburton's finer individual performance really of the season, certainly here as of late. And a couple Colts items I want to get to. I know I wasn't with you guys, Mark, on Thursday and Friday. Still a little bit of news that trickled out, Colts related. I think there's an Anthony Richardson item that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a change around him, and the Colts elected not to go down that path here. We'll get to that at some point here on this Monday morning, but certainly plenty to recap from Bloomington yesterday. And what I don't think, Mark, I'm trying, when the rivalry's 200 games plus, I don't want to be too hyperbolic. That half, though. I mean, it's just, it is amazing to see the turnaround that happened down 12 at half. It's not like Indiana banged home 10 threes in the second half or something crazy like that. It was defense. It was a slew of turnovers by really Purdue's best players. And that was an ass-kicking there in the final 20 minutes from Mike Woodson's bunch.
Well, it's very generic to say it's a tale of two halves, but that's exactly what it was, because Purdue had them dead to rights heading into halftime. The crowd was turning. IU couldn't hit a shot for the longest time. Just this long run that Purdue went on, you're like, well, this is over. I mean, they go into the locker room, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. I don't know, Mike Woodson got as fired up as Mike Woodson can get in the locker room or something.
I think the Firecrackers fired them up.
Maybe.
Are you a Firecracker fan? I love the halftime show, the Firecrackers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm all in on the Firecrackers.
The young, young age children performing jump rope.
Uh-huh. If you can't get Red Panda, get the Firecrackers.
Exactly. They might have been the igniting force. In all seriousness, credit to Mike Woodson for sticking with that group, I thought, in the second half.
Which is what we've criticized him before, of not switching things up.
And that's why I think it's worth pointing out, Mark, is you had that group of, Leo Galloway, Miles Rice's defense certainly deserves mention. Malik Renew, Umar Ballo, it seemed like they kind of split time almost. And then I thought they were just more committed to being like, all right, Purdue can't do anything defensively at the rim. You have got to try and impose your will at that, aspect of their defense, and finally they did. But yeah, I mean, how many times do you see a team get booed off the floor at the end of the first half and then come back and win, win by 15 over their rival? And as absurd as it sounds, a team that has won 2 games in the last 5 weeks will wake up on this Monday morning and they'll be sniffing right around that NCAA bubble. Still work to be done. I kind of look at it as they probably need 4 more wins. They've got 4 regular season games left, plus you would assume, at least 1, of course, in the Big Ten tournament. I think if you're able to get 4, that could be enough. I think we learned from Indiana State last year that you want to be walking into the conference tournament season like team 62, 63. You don't want to flirt with the, hey, we just need a perfect and quiet, conference tournament week. No. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be bid stealers, all of that. You want to be making sure you're on the heavy right side of it. So Indiana still work to be done. But the 2 wins they've gotten over the last month, they are the 2 most important, arguably, when you consider it for their resume. So 73-58, 48-21 in the second half.
When was the last time you saw 21 points out of a Matt Painter-led squad? It's been a while. But that was one of the more sorry second halves I've seen.
58 for the game. I think they had that against Marquette earlier this year. I can't imagine that's happened too many times. And again, they shot it, well in the first half. It was 6 of 11 at halftime. Miles Colvin gave them great minutes there in the first half. Fletcher Lawyer, guys that, for Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn to look like that in the second half, Mark, that's probably what stands out to me the most. Again, I get that Purdue clearly has issues defending the rim right now, and that's probably an understatement. But for those 2 All-Americans, really, to play that poorly is head-scratching. 4 straight losses for the Boilers, and they will now have UCLA coming up later this week inside of Mackey.
What do you make of Purdue right now? Longest losing streak for Matt Painter in 5 years. Kind of hitting the wrong time of the schedule. Late February, you don't kind of see these dips for Purdue. We kind of talked about it leading into the game Thursday, Friday, of just what exactly would a loss do for Matt Painter's squad. Are you more concerned? Is the ceiling now lowered as far as how deep you think they can go in the tournament? Or has that been unchanged right now?
I just continue to think the margin for error is so thin.
Yeah.
Like, if I walked away from yesterday and said, hey, Purdue loses by 15, I wouldn't have thought Lawyer had 20 and Miles Colvin played his best game in a while. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't have thought that would be the recipe. But Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, that's their worst half of the year when you combine what they did in the second half. I largely think the Braden Smith stuff was just so uncharacteristic. Turnover after turnover there early on. He had that one backcourt pass when he was like on the ground and just kind of threw it over to Anthony Leal. I'm like, that is not a 100-start, one of the best point guards, frankly, in probably Big Ten history, certainly Purdue history, making that sort of play. So I think you could maybe chalk that up to, okay, that's the anomaly, but I still don't think the rim protection is going to change anytime soon. And Trey Kaufman-Renn, it seems like you're just walking on eggshells with him in foul trouble every game here, especially as of late. So definitely some questions for Purdue of, getting to the second weekend, where I think, a week or 2 ago, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, you thought that would be a foregone conclusion. So again, John Herrick going to join us coming up at 8. We'll talk a little Pacers as well. They were wire to wire yesterday. We've seen, Mark, at times this season, the Pacers catch the good injury break. Yesterday was one of them.
Yep.
No Kawhi Leonard, no Norman Powell for the Clippers, and not handle their business. They did very emphatically yesterday, and now they will have, I think, one of the more marquee opponents you can have in your building. It's the Nuggets tonight. Denver not on a back-to-back. The Pacers are. Denver just had their 9-game win streak snapped over the weekend. 4.5-point underdog.
Yeah,
Pacers tonight.
I thought it was going to be interesting coming out of the All-Star break, just how did this Pacers squad handle the rest? Because we saw going into the All-Star break, they were dragging ass. We were kind of like, I think this team could use an All-Star break more than most teams because they had that West Coast trip where they, all things considered, probably should have been 0-4. They pulled out 2 wins somehow, but they were limping in the All-Star break. And now they've come out and you're kind of like, where's the offense going to be? What's going to happen? And they kind of look like the old Pacers now in these first 2 games back. I know it's a very small sample size, but 2 games in, the scoring's back. Halliburton looks back. Miles Turner back in the lineup. He's looking to be pretty good so far. So far, so good. The big test is going to be tonight because it's a big powerhouse in the West in the Nuggets coming to town. Second night of a back-to-back for the Pacers. How do they handle it? Because I thought splitting these first 4 games at home out of the All-Star break, that'd be a win. You've already got 2. Can you make it 3 now? Because then you got the Raptors later this week. Raptors, by all intents and purposes, not the best team, but they made a trade at the deadline that's pretty good. So can you get another one? Can you stack some wins now after the All-Star break?
I feel like I'm dragging ass on this Monday morning.
Yeah, that's okay. Most people are on a Monday. You in particular. The Monday after a vacation, everyone's dragging ass. You're always kind of like, should I have tiered this out a little more? Should I take an extra day so then I come back on a short work week?
And we got back Saturday. So, we had kind of the extra buffer day. But, I found myself just having probably an extra beer or 2 that I probably shouldn't have had yesterday either. And now all of a sudden, here I am thinking, gosh, that alarm. I just slept horrifically last night.
Same here.
I gave a Purdue effort in the second half.
Now, do you take a little solace knowing that we're out at the combine the rest of the week?
Yeah, and I actually like the combine.
Yeah,
I know
I do
that
too.
like my media brethren would just be blasphemy that I said that out loud, but like we haven't had a somewhat meaningful Colts event in a month and a half. So, I enjoy hearing from Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. I enjoy just the atmosphere of the combine. I'm not one that sits there in section 228 with my stopwatch and fret over it.
Now we know you're missing football when you're saying, I miss hearing Shane Steichen.
Well,
I can't name a more memorable Shane Steichen quote in my life. And you're like, I miss Shane Steichen. I miss hearing him talk ball.
Yeah, maybe I regret saying that out loud. But you do get, pretty much all of the GMs and the coaches from around the NFL speaking. I enjoy the podium sessions with the college prospects, put little, there's Tyler Warren. Okay, boom, I found Daniel Jeremiah. He had a conference call late last week, the NFL Network draft analyst, who you'll see a ton, obviously coming up this week on their TV coverage. I thought he had a couple of interesting notes from his draft call I want to get to at some point today in regards to the tight end position, in regards to possibly safety for the Colts at 14. So, yeah, change of scenery. I also probably like to, Mark.
Yeah, we rarely get out.
You
in
and I
the
have
mornings.
talked about this a whole lot. We don't do a lot of remote shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we'll be over at the convention center. I think there's 64 different stations and or teams that'll set up shop in there. We'll be one of them. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for us. We'll have a variety of guests. Again, like I said, Chris Ballard scheduled to join us coming up Wednesday. So Steichen and Ballard will both do their big press conferences on Tuesday. That's late Tuesday, 4:30 for Ballard, 5:30 for Steichen. And then I think that next day, Shane will go on with Jake, and then we'll have Chris Ballard joining us, sounds like Wednesday morning in the 8 o'clock hour.
I'm sure Chris is very excited to hear that Kevin Bowen
Boy,
is
I'm
gonna
sure
get
he
him.
is. I'm sure he is. That is, I'm sure he cannot wait for Wednesday morning.
And
we had him on last year
Yeah.
at the Combine as well.
And you're hoping to, pepper him with some pass-catching questions, I'm sure, which I'm sure he's thrilled about.
Yes.
He can't wait.
He's just eagerly making the commute down from Westfield to think about that. What did I miss? I missed horrific weather.
You missed horrific weather, frigid temperatures, snow. Other than that, not a ton. Obviously, All-Star break, thoughts, what the NBA has done. Oh, I know when we need to ask you. Did you watch the Four Nations finale? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
We were all in.
Yes, you and Brendan King. I watched it. I actually watched it at a bar called the Freckled Fin. My wife and I went out for our anniversary.
I love the bar names in Florida.
Yeah.
Everything's got to have a fish theme.
And I started a USA chant after the second goal.
Good.
Mm-hmm. And I was so proud of myself.
Yeah. Did you have USA print?
And I did
pasted on your
think Maddie
chest?
was like overly embarrassed too. Because luckily some others joined in. I think if I would have been the awkward.
The only guy.
Who's this guy over here? So I did that. And then I love Sean McDonough at one point. First off, I love Sean McDonough, period.
Yeah,
He
friend of the
joined
show.
us a lot during the college football playoff. But he had a comment late. I guess this would have been late in the third period right before overtime. He said, every bouncing puck causes anxiety for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, and again, I'm not a hockey guy, but I felt like that line sums up what makes hockey unique. And I don't know, this sounds maybe like a July topic, but what other sport has that? Like soccer, the field's too big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, a bouncing ball in the penalty area obviously causes anxiety, but it's just like too big of a field to get that on a routine basis. In hockey, particularly in the third period, I find myself, when I watch a playoff hockey, Mark, being like, gosh, my heart rate is through the roof right now. This is not healthy for me when I don't care about Maple Leafs and Red Wings.
I know. It is one of those things where it's like any shift, anything like the puck could just take a funny bounce off a skate or deflect off someone's thigh and it goes in. You're like, well, I turned the game right there. I did find myself watching more hockey than I have like all season long from the fallout from the Four Nations where, the Capitals and the Penguins were on. I was watching that. I think it was Capitals and Oilers was on yesterday. I was watching a little of that. So I did find myself more tuning into the NHL. So I'm sure that's exactly what they want, too. They want kind of the carryover effect from the Four Nations. And in the Dykton household, it has worked. I mean, I'm a hockey guy usually anyway, but I have kind of checked out the NHL just because the Blackhawks stink, and that's my team. But I found myself tuning into the NHL more post Four Nations.
Yeah, I was all about it. All about it. I know some people here in the YouTube chat bringing up kind of the early officiating in that game. I thought the Leal Caleb First tangle, I thought that should have just been a play on. I was just so pissed when they went to the monitor. I'm like, come on. It's a rivalry. It's 3 minutes into the game. That's not Draymond Green on the ground. I don't think Leal and First are two guys that, have a reputation. It's not the big dude Vlad Golden up in Michigan. Like, whatever. Blow the whistle. Bring them together if you need to. Say play on. That didn't need to go to the monitor. And I thought that kind of set an early tone for Indiana. I actually thought Indiana played fairly well the first 10 minutes. Then Purdue had that big flurry there to end the first half, and I just think we're so programmed watching those two programs to think, oh, that's how the second half's going to unfold. I don't think anybody in their right mind thought Indiana was going to come out and do what they did in the second half.
I thought that game was over at halftime.
They certainly did. And again, it's not like they hit 7-8 threes in the second half to all of a sudden turn that around. I'm dragging on this Monday morning, but let's do a little Butler 4-pack. You see who's coming into Hinkle on Wednesday night?
Oh, yeah?
Ricky P.
Uh-huh.
That would be Coach Pitino. 9 o'clock tip. I believe they're going for the clinch of the Big East Conference. Butler did get a win at DePaul over the weekend. Corbin, let's take two fast fingers here. We'll do that on this Monday morning. If you'd like a 4-pack to Butler St. John's, that is Wednesday night, 9 o'clock over at Hinkle. Coach Pitino and company. Give us a call, 317-239-1070. I'm Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter on this Monday. Thanks for starting your week with us. This is the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. What a second half it was for Mike Woodson's bunch yesterday. 48-21. They outscore the Boilers for a win that they absolutely had to have for their NCAA tournament hopes. Here was the Indiana head coach on what happened in that second half and the massive victory.
It's a great second half. I mean, I didn't play very many people off the bench. I kind of rode the seniors. We've been in a lot of close games over the last month and a half, man, and I just hadn't been able to get them over the hump. And tonight they refused to lose. I thought the second half we did everything from a defensive standpoint that we'd worked on these days that we had to practice, and it was a nice carryover. You know, we couldn't make a shot the first half. I thought we got some decent looks, but we just couldn't make them. And they made shots, and I thought the second half our defense really picked it up, and we were able to get stops, and then we started to make shots.
Yeah, Matt Painter took 2 timeouts in the first 6 minutes of the second half. Mike Woodson did stick with that group of some combination, really, of 6 guys. McKenzie and Baco didn't play in the second half. Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, Luke Goody, Miles Rice defense on Braden Smith, and then those bigs, Malik Renew and Umar Ballo, certainly exposed Purdue's issues at the rim. Matt Painter, probably easily the most cussing I've heard from Matt Painter in a post-game press conference. Here was him afterwards.
That's what's frustrating because, we've been able to show poise. We've been able to have composure, especially getting on the road, being able to play. Not always. I think it affects everybody at some point. And to say we lost our composure is an understatement.
Weird stretch for Matt Painter's crew right now. Very odd to see them 4 straight losses. Worst stretch in his last 5 years for Purdue. They're kind of on the struggle bus right now.
Well, in that second half, especially seeing their 2 studs kind of wilt in that environment, that I think is what probably was a bit unexpected, certainly after a 12-point lead at halftime. So for Indiana, they got Penn State at home. Coming up on Wednesday, Purdue will have UCLA visiting Mackey later this week.
Almost felt like they just took their foot off the gas. They headed into halftime like, we got this, and then just totally took the second half off. It was very odd. So moving to the NBA, though, Pacers got a nice victory last night against the LA Clippers, 129-111. Tyrese Halliburton, 29 points, 12 assists, looking strong there. Another 7 Pacers in double figures, the second straight game, back-to-back opportunities for that. Now is the big one. This is the one that I had circled coming out of the All-Star break. They take on the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic tonight. Any thoughts? Can they make it 3 in a row? But that is going to be a tall order.
Yeah, and Denver not on a back-to-back. They were on a 9-game win streak. They lost to L.A. That would be the Lakers over the weekend. Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to this one. Obviously you wish the Pacers wouldn't be on the back-to-back, but they had great balance yesterday. I don't think their starters had to play super stressful minutes late in the fourth quarter, and I thought Halliburton individually, one of his better efforts of the season. We'll see about T.J. McConnell. He did sprain that ankle there yesterday, so we'll keep an eye out on that. Rick Carlisle tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
Pacers Nuggets 7 o'clock. Coverage starts at 6:30. Here, did you see the between the legs alley-oop to Toppin?
That highlight, and then the Nemhard one-handed full court heave in stride to Tyrese Halliburton. There was a couple highlights yesterday over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Combine week, you'll start to have prospects to send upon the city of Indianapolis here early this week. We will be out there for the morning show each of the next 4 days. We'll be over at the Convention Center Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I want to say from Indiana colleges, you have 11 prospects, 8 from Notre Dame, Curtis Rourke, CJ West from Indiana, Marcus Bowe from Purdue, the offensive lineman. Actually, some people think he could be the first Indiana college guy taken in the draft. So that'll be kind of your local flavor coming up. We'll get the first IndyCar race of the year on Sunday down in St. Pete. So I know a lot of eyes on the streets of St. Pete for that one. Pato Ward, your defending champ there. Anything on your end, Mark?
The only thing, going back to the Combine, which is not overly surprising, but just something to note, Shedeur Sanders not expected to work out at the Combine, which we were kind of debating last week, who's going to be the guy of the 2025 Combine that's going to get the most media at their podium. Shedeur Sanders?
I would think maybe a little bit of the Travis Hunter, like what position will you play? But it does seem like we are lacking like the Kyler Murray baseball, the Manti Te'o girlfriend, the Jameis Winston, whatever that was, even a little bit of the Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Seems like we are lacking a little bit of that.
Maybe Prime makes an appearance. Maybe his dad pops up.
Hopefully not. Last item, boy, some scary images. Did you guys see the pictures of Paul Casaro and the IU Indy team bus coming home from Northern Kentucky?
Yeah, Ashley actually brought it to my attention. She's like, "Did you see this?" I'm like, "What?" And I couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah, their team bus caught on fire on the way home. They were able to get all the players, all the staff members off the bus. Everyone is safe, but it sounded like they did lose some personnel, apparel, baggage, stuff like that. Just the bus is fried.
Yeah, it's completely torched.
That's the only image or the only way I can truly describe it. Mark, maybe retweet those pictures from the show account if you don't mind. Just some ugly, ugly images, but certainly the most important part, Paul Casaro and company were able to not only get off the bus, of course, and safe, but they were able to get home yesterday.
Yeah,
so.
you'll take the lost baggage or whatever it is, as long as everybody's okay, everybody's uninjured. That's the most important thing.
Picture a car on the side of the road, abandoned, that just looks fried, and it's a bus that transports whatever, 30-some staff members, team, whatever the official number is. For that. All right, on the other side, let's get in some Colts chatter again. I mentioned it earlier in the show. I thought Daniel Jeremiah's conference call heading into the combine had some interesting tidbits. The Colts have finalized their coaching staff. Just a tad head-scratching around Anthony Richardson for me. We'll explain more and plenty from Bloomington yesterday and what was a tale of two halves as Indiana, in a season that many would like to forget, maybe even an era they'd like to forget. They will want to remember that second half over Purdue. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter on this Monday morning.
song play during your trip to Florida? I have to imagine, like, you
Sounds
opened
like
up with this.
Back of the freckled Finn right now.
Yeah. After Kevin's chanting USA, USA, Wham is hitting the speakers, and he's like, yeah. Another runner this way, please, sir.
Tell you what, the whole bar in unison with me, thankfully, after that. There was a Canadian couple that, did kind of smile, and then they obviously got the last laugh when it was all said and done. Good to be back, though.
Oh, so the Canadians were there, too?
There was, yeah, an older...
were they talking bleep?
They were very respectful. Yeah.
Oh, that's not surprising.
Very, very respectful on that. I mean, they're arguably playing for their independence, right?
Well, we talked about that, and then I was told to go across the hall if we're going to have that conversation.
Plenty to get to this Monday morning. I'm glad to be back. I am a man of routine, and I actually look forward to this week. That would be the Combine in town. We'll be over there at the Convention Center Tuesday through Friday. I'm Kevin Bowe and Mark Dykton alongside Corbin Lingenfelter on the ones and twos. We'll get into a little bit of Colts talk here in a few, but going back to yesterday, again, I think and I say this with all sincerity because I think it's been an issue in the Mike Woodson era, a big credit to him sticking with what worked there in the second half. They get off to that just crazy start there right out of the second half, and, he doesn't go to the guy, Mark, that might have been their best player in West Lafayette in the first matchup in McKenzie Mbako.
Yep.
He didn't go back to him at all.
Nope.
Really stuck with I would say the three old dudes plus Miles Rice. And Rice, ever since the benching, I feel like you've seen a little bit of a wake-up call for him. I thought he delivered with some defense on Braden Smith, and then the three old guys would be the three Indiana dudes. That would be Galloway, Leal, and Goody. And then I thought it was just more of a commitment to Malik Renew and Umar Ballo. I thought at times in the first half it was like Purdue's weakness right now is glaring. I mean, it has been well documented. It's obvious. It is the rim protection. It's the inability to defend the paint. And I didn't think they were as committed to it in the first half. They settled a little bit too much. I thought you saw more of a focus. The turnover certainly helped what they created there. But again, credit to Mike Woodson and his staff for doing something that I feel like at times the staff hasn't done enough of.
Well, it is funny that we're kind of praising him for keeping it the same when all season long I feel like we've ripped him like, you got to change it up. And then the game where he probably should have changed it up, given the way the first half ended, he stuck with it, and you're like, oh, that worked out. That was rare that happened, that Mike Woodson's decision-making actually paid off for him. And Matt Painter, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on with Purdue right now. Again, 4 straight losses, only 21 points in the second half. They are on the struggle bus, to say the least, heading into this final stretch of games before the tournament time.
So Mike Woodson tells the story post-game of that chair, 40-year anniversary of the night chair toss, that was indeed the chair. Now, we had Steve Reed, the Purdue guard, on back. That would have been the day of the first matchup between these two teams. We had Steve Reed and A.J. Guyton on that day's show, and Steve Reed told great stories about missing all the foul shots as the technicals were piling up, and him looking over at Gene Cady and think, oh boy, if those eyes could kill, I'd be about 6 feet under right now and certainly wouldn't be on the team bus back to West Lafayette. But Mike Woodson shared this post-game. That was indeed, with obviously a little bit of a booster seat action there. That was the chair that Robert Montgomery threw across the court.
What you guys don't realize, that is probably the chair. I've had it a while. I know a lot of people say they have the chair, but a guy by the name of Scott Greer, who was the tennis coach here many years ago, he was the only one thinking out of the box that night when Knight threw that chair. And that morning he got up and he came to Assembly Hall and he got the chair and he got Sam Bell and Yeagley and Doc Councilman and Coach Knight to all sign off on it and took pictures with it. And a good friend of mine, his wife was Scott Greer's daughter, and he passed away about a year ago, and there sat the little red chair with all the documentation. And I happened to get my hands on it. So that's why it was special to have it here tonight. I wasn't going to throw the chair, but I did want to sit in it.
How much of the chair played into that second half surge for the Hoosiers?
Well, defensively, I'm sure Bob Knight had to enjoy that a whole lot. The documentation on the chair, I mean, it sounds like we're signing off like some kids' rights here with this chair.
Declaration of Independence in Bloomington.
So you needed the other respected coaches in the athletic department to all agree to that. Did they sign the chair itself, or are they signing paperwork for the chair? I was a little confused.
The chair might have an NIL deal we're unaware
of. The full
of.
background. I believe Greg Doyle at one point wrote a column on where the chair was. You think Mike Woodson sits in that at home?
I don't know. That
his
chair,
breakfast chair?
That chair looks every bit of 40 years old, too, because I believe I've sat in some of those chairs in elementary school.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, the only thing missing is a little like desk that folds over.
The greatest nap you could ever take, the fold-down desk.
Yeah, can you get your arm in here on that little little test there? Getting Indiana coming up. They have Penn State on Wednesday. Joe Lunardi had them going into yesterday, Mark, as like I want to say it was like team 6 or 7 out.
Yep.
And he mentioned before the game that a win would push them at least into the top 4 out. I think whatever, sort of bubble bracket projection you're going to look at, Indiana's going to be hovering right there on the bubble. Again, to close out the year, it's home to Penn State. They'll have their Western trip coming up this weekend, early next week. That's at Washington, at Oregon. And then it's Ohio State inside of Assembly Hall to close the season. 4 games. At Oregon is the only quad 1 game currently. I still think if you get 4, like let's say you go 3-1 and then win a game in Indy for the Big Ten tournament, that resume, I think, could be enough. Now, again, I'll echo what I said a little bit earlier. We learned this at the Indiana State last year. You don't need to be going into the week of conference tournaments as team 65 or 66. If you're doing that, you better do a lot of work in your conference tournament.
Better get a little deep in that tournament.
Because bid stealing happens. And again, Indiana and deep runs in the Big Ten tournament are non-existent. I mean, hell, last year we saw Mike Woodson get ejected from the Nebraska ass-kicking up there in Minneapolis to end that season. So that's kind of been par for the course for Indiana historically in that tournament, no matter where the games are played. Even in Indy, it's been that. So, again, as crazy as it sounds for a team that's won 2 games in the last month, the fact that at Michigan State and Purdue are 2 of the wins, every year it's a weak bubble. You're going to hear that, be like, oh, the bubble stinks. Well, it stinks every year. That's what happens when you include 68. But Indiana's going to have a couple of really, really good wins to compare the resume. Now the question is, can they kind of hold serve here down the stretch and hear their name called a couple of Sundays from now?
Well, and the other thing, too, is that you get these signature wins near the end of the season, because that's what everybody remembers come bracket time is, oh, yeah, they got that signature win against Purdue. They got that signature win against Michigan State at the end. People remember that. If those games happen earlier in the season, the start of conference play, they kind of get swept on the rug a little bit. But these late season marquee victories kind of stick in people's minds come tournament time. So can they split? Let's play the hypothetical game. If they split these last 4, and let's say win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, is that enough?
Split the last 4, 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. I would think so, because I would think that second win in the Big Ten tournament would be of quality. Mm-hmm. It would be a neutral site win, obviously, over what you would probably say is a top, 5 seed in the Big Ten, something like that. So I would think so. Again, you just don't want to flirt too much with the inevitable bid stealing that we have on an annual basis. The Mike Woodson chair story, it sounded a bit like my mother after maybe an extra drink down there in Florida, retelling a story that I'm like, boy, I feel like that story's changed a little bit over the years.
It's like every fisherman. The fish was this big, and the hands always get a little wider. And you're like, wow, you landed a marlin. And it was like a largemouth bass.
John Herrick, IU Radio Network. You hear him pregame and halftime with Don Fisher. Eric Seward is going to join us in studio. He's with our sister station, WIBC. He'll join us here coming up in about 15. The Colts finalized their coaching staff late last week, Mark. I think this probably was after even you guys signed off on Friday. Defensively, of course, it will be a lot of change. Lou Anarumo will be the coordinator there. Their defensive staff has a heavy defensive background to it, including Anarumo. So if you're looking for, okay, what potentially will change defensively for the Colts, we'll obviously wait and see about personnel. But I think from a coverage standpoint, that's going to be different. You're going to play more coverages. I think you will disguise a little bit more on the back end. I think that'll be differently. An area that I was curious if the Colts would change, that they indeed did not, the internal voices around Anthony Richardson are all the same.
Yeah, unchanged.
Obviously, individually, we've heard the story, and we'll talk with Chris Bowden and Shane Steichen this week, get a little bit more on him working with Chris Hess, this kind of biometric guy that Josh Allen raves about in terms of changing his accuracy career in the NFL. That is, I think, kind of Richardson wanting to do that. But I was interested, would Shane Steichen change voices offensively? Would he change offensive coordinator? Would he change quarterbacks coach? Would he change, passing game specialist? Some of those titles that you see announced. And he is not. And so that is interesting to me because, I think sometimes, frankly, a new voice and or a new message can be very healthy. And clearly, whatever coaching the offensive staff was doing to Anthony Richardson the first 2 years, it wasn't really resonating on, I would argue, many fronts. So that one is a little head-scratching to me, of the Colts saying, no, we like our voices. We like our
guys.
We like our guys, yeah, to steal a Chris Ballard phrase from 2024, I guess. Shane Steichen not messing with that offensive staff at all.
Do you think that is more they really do like their guys, or they just don't want to add any more like disruption to Anthony Richardson's offseason? Like, okay, this is the first offseason, he's going to be fully healthy. Let's not change like coaching staff and try to learn like new vernacular or anything like that. Like,
I'm
try
not
to get them
saying
on all
you
on the
need to
same
learn
page.
new language.
No,
like,
but I'm just saying
obviously
as far as rocking the boat at all, they're kind of like, let's keep it, par for the course. And
obviously the Richardson thing is complicated, and there's many layers to it, and that's not a good thing. But I just thought that, and I guess I kind of go back to Andrew Luck starting the NFL, Mark. Chuck Pagano, a heavy defensive-minded coach, he went with some dominant personalities around Andrew Luck, and he also made sure that, like, they had very veteran voices. And you could look at that from a player standpoint, and you could look at that from a coach standpoint. They re-signed Reggie Wayne. That was a big deal. Remember, they had all those Black Monday casualties for the Colts of guys that they cut from the previous era. They wanted to keep a veteran voice with Andrew Luck. That was Reggie Wayne. And again, we're talking Andrew Luck. It's laughable to compare the Andrew Luck college experience to the Anthony Richardson college experience. And then Bruce Arians is your offensive coordinator, and Clyde Christensen is your quarterback's coach. You want to talk about high-ranking coordinators, coaches, experience-wise, voice-wise, particularly with Arians. You're not messing around with Andrew Luck, this quote-unquote generational prospect.
Right.
And yet with Anthony Richardson, they opted to go for a lot of youth in the voices around him, a lot of inexperience on that offensive staff. The results have been the results. Clearly, Shane Steichen doesn't think that those voices need to change. So that was just on the list of curiosity that I had this offseason. That was one of my items in regards to Richardson. Will you do anything differently internally with your coaching staff? Because you haven't had the veteran personnel on the field. The skilled guys are all relatively young. When you look at those guys, nobody of course Wayne's pedigree, or no one even in kind of the 30-year-old camp, if you will. But also offensively, they have gone run it back with that staff.
I'm guessing that might be one of your questions you have tomorrow during the media scrum for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. What do you think the response is? Do you think that's, Anthony Richardson's entering a critical year 3, so we wanted to keep everything the same and just, see what we got? Or what do you think their response would be as far as unchanges?
Yeah.
No changes in this coaching staff.
I know. When you brought that up, you don't want to make things whatever. You don't want to put too much on his plate. I hear you out. But then I'm also like, man,
that's where we're at, I feel like.
But the message just clearly didn't ring true.
Right.
Does him being healthy for an offseason all of a sudden lead to opened ears and the message now becoming clear? Remember Richardson's first comments after he got benched? It was like, yeah, I don't know why. Well, that's not very healthy.
Yeah, not a good communications.
That's not what you want to hear at all from your young quarterback. So, yeah, I think that will be on the list. Daniel Jeremiah, by the way, NFL Network draft analyst, he had a conference call. He does this annually right before the combine. He has Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, as the 7th ranked player in the entire draft. He mentioned on the call he thinks some teams will have Loveland above Tyler Warren as the top tight end in the draft. So I think if you are looking at it from a Colts standpoint, you consider the need at tight end. Some would argue the top need on the entire team right now. That is really interesting to me, of just how that plays out. It seems like Loveland may be more of the true receiving threat at tight end. Obviously, Tyler Warren can do that at a very high level, but Loveland, of course, had horrific quarterback play at Michigan this past season, so statistically it's probably hard to kind of match up, but he was very high in his praise of the catch radius and the chess piece he can be for an offense. So, again, it sounds like, by all accounts, it's a very deep tight end draft class, but that one caught my eye, Mark, of wow. I haven't seen many draft analysts go there with Loveland, putting him right up there with Tyler Warren in this draft.
Is it Tyler Warren or bust for you for this Colts draft? Like, if he gets off the board, and we've started to see some mock drafts where he's going like as early as 6 and 7 right now in some mock drafts. I think Daniel Jeremiah's draft, even most recent mock draft, had him going relatively early. But if Tyler Warren is off the board for the Colts, like, are you of the mind of take the best player regardless of position at that point, or are you trading down and getting out of there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I'm a fan of trading down anymore. I think too many times you've tried to do that, and I don't think you've truly kind of reaped the benefits of that. I tend to think this roster needs an injection into the top of the talent board, not necessarily the quantity. High-end quality over quantity. That's kind of how I would view it.
Even if that's offensive line, which we've kind of dry heaved a little bit thinking about it.
I think I told you guys, and when James was with us last week as well, James Boyd from The Athletic, I feel like this offseason does have to have we can't get to the end of 2025 and feel like, man, if we would have given Anthony Richardson a little bit more, do you think it could have been different?
Yeah.
So like
those excuses can't be there after this season.
So I tend to think that it is a little bit more of an offensive focus for me. But at the same time, tight end would be kind of the one that stands out that early offensively. I don't think anything else stands out offensively that high in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think running back's a need, obviously not at 14. So I think I'm also interested in what happens at safety, because that was the other one that Jeremiah brought up of Malachi Starks from Georgia.
Yep.
Really young dude in the draft. He's going to test really well at the combine. You know the Colts are enamored with that type of stuff. Does Lou Anarumo trust a rookie safety? Would he do that? That is probably the other kind of wrinkle to this. By the way, Anarumo, I believe, going to be on with John coming up tomorrow. So just kind of map out the week for us on air from a Colts standpoint. We'll be over at the Combine. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, they'll do their big media sessions tomorrow in the 4 and the 5 o'clock hours for our shows. Anarumo will be on with John. I think that's 5 o'clock tomorrow. We're scheduled to have Ballard around 8:15. Still a little bit up in the air coming up on Wednesday. And Jake will have Shane Steichen on coming up on Wednesday as well. So that's what the Combine looks like over there at the Convention Center coming up this week.
I think if Tyler Warren is off the board at 14, but if you can address safety like a Malachi Starks or a top-tier safety at 14, I think most Colts fans would be fine with that.
And
that's addressing one of your two biggest needs, I would say, on this roster in the offseason.
And you can
tight end and safety.
And you look at some of these tight ends. I mean, George Kittle's a 5th-round pick. I mean, Kelsey was a 3rd-rounder.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Laporta's a 2nd-rounder. I mean, Mark Andrews, 3rd-rounder. I mean, you can find very high-level tight ends in this league outside of round 1. Frankly, if you look at the first round of tight ends over the years, obviously Brock Bowers had a great rookie season, but it's not a lot of, absolute studs that have been taken in round 1. Kyle Pitts was, the 3rd overall pick?
Yep.
I don't think he's really fallen into that. Eric Ebron, 10th overall pick, something like that. So maybe that's just a little bit of pause from the tight end standpoint. But
yeah, you're hoping Chris Ballard and company can identify that talent at the tight end position, which they have not done for the large part of his tenure as GM.
Wire-to-wire win for the Pacers last night. They took care of business. No Norman Powell, no Kawhi Leonard. Certainly caught a break there, but that was very impressive by Rick Carlisle's bunch. That's now 2 in a row here to start the second half. They will have the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic and company in town. Tonight, they are an underdog. Indiana, Denver has won 9 in a row. That'll be over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse coming up at 7 o'clock. More on that, more on the second half to remember, certainly down in Bloomington yesterday. And man, that was courtside for it. John Herrick from IU and their radio network, he joins us coming up next. This is the Fan Morning Show here on a Monday. Thanks for spending it with us. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. That's the legend, Don Fisher, of course, right there. The IU Radio Network as Indiana capped. I don't think it's that hyperbolic to say one of the more impressive halves that building has seen. And I think when you factor in the circumstances, you consider how the season's unfolded. I mean, hell, they had lost, 4 straight at home coming into that game. It's your rival. NCAA tournament hopes are on whatever life support you want to describe it as. Purdue's ranked, and it's not like Indiana ran home 10 threes in the second half. That was defense, and that set the tone from the opening whistle there after halftime. Good Monday morning to you, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter, and a man that sat courtside right alongside Don Fisher and Eric Sewer. You hear him pre-games. You hear him at halftime as well. You'll hear him coming up Saturday, 10:30 of the 1A Girls State Finals game. The great John Herrick is with us here from WIBC. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's great to be with you.
Simply, what changed? I mean, was it the firecrackers as the halftime entertainment?
Was it the chair?
Was that the spark that was needed?
First of all, halftime entertainment, top notch.
Wonderful.
It was like those girls that do the jump rope, and they are incredible. I mean, they come out, they have. I don't know how they jump all the rope that they do, and they start like swinging each other and jump roping each other. It's some of the most entertaining.
The coordination
halftime.
is tremendous.
Coordination's tremendous. Just. That's my second favorite halftime, next to the lady on the bike.
Red Panda.
The Panda, yeah.
Red Panda.
Flips the bowls on her head. Those are some great quality halftime entertainment you can see at Assembly Hall in Bloomington sometimes. I think one of the biggest things that changed, guys, is defense. I think we finally started to see this team play the defense that Mike Woodson has tried to get them capable of playing. Because the way they harassed Braden Smith and the way they went after Trey Kaufman-Wren and Fletcher Lawyer. Now, Fletcher Lawyer got loose and did what he did in the second half, but Braden Smith was clearly frustrated. He had 6 turnovers. It started on the defensive end. And if it starts on the defensive end and you force turnovers, then you can get offense going the other way. And Indiana had 23 points off turnovers. Some of those were fast breaks. And Miles Rice when you can get Miles Rice out in the open floor, a lot of good things can happen for you. And Indiana didn't do a whole lot of that at the end of the first half, which is why they were trailing by 12. When they got out and ran more and they played better defense, that's the biggest reason they were able to win this game, I think.
John Herrick joining us in studio today on the Fan Morning Show. John, we talked about it like all season long, but we've been critical of Mike Woodson not making changes to his lineup. And then here, yesterday's game against Purdue, he had every reason to go into halftime and make some changes. The way that first half ended, boos were raining down, Purdue was rolling, and yet he comes out, and all of a sudden we're giving him flowers because he's done right and the lineup stepped up. What do you all take into that?
Well, I think, first of all, he had some help from Bob Knight yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
He had the chair, right? He sat in the chair that Bob
That was
Knight
the legit
threw.
chair, right?
The legit chair, yes.
Like
yes.
We're determining how that happened.
That chair looks so old.
Yeah. That's why that's the dead giveaway, right? That's why it's got to be the chair. So he had the memento from Bob Knight, which helped. Then there's the saying that Bob Knight used to always have where the most important minutes of the second half are the first 5 minutes. And Indiana just crushed those first 5 minutes. And they go
really
on
the first 90 seconds
right,
when Painter takes that first time out.
Yeah. And I think we said it going into the second half. Eric Sewer and Don said it best. Like the way they start this second half is going to tell you a lot. Because if it doesn't start well, this could not end well. But then they come out, they go on that 7-0 run, they get a 3, they get a dunk, they get turnovers. Purdue all of a sudden looks flustered. Matt Painter does all he can. He calls timeout, but Indiana at that point was feeling it. And I just think that was the point where Woodson kept feeling the game out well. He was like, there's no reason to make changes at this timeout. No reason to make changes at the under 16 timeout. No reason to make changes at the under 12-minute media timeout. So he made sure that he was like, look, there's no reason to change anything now. These guys have had 9 days rest.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to make a change until Malik Renew picked up his 3rd foul. So I thought Coach Mike Woodson did a great job of letting the game come to him, and I thought that was a big reason why they won.
Yeah, and Mike Woodson's not going to reveal, what went into Umar Ballo and Mackenzie Mbako not starting, but I thought was interesting too, John, there in the second half. And John Herrick's with us, IU Radio Network, of course, Don Fisher, Eric Sewer. 8:30, is that right, Wednesday?
Yeah, through Wednesday, yes.
So 7:30 pregame. John will have you on WIBC. It would have been, I think it would have been easy to go to Mbako given Woodson's past precedent of Mbako played great at Purdue. He's been in
Yes.
double figures 6 of the last 7 games. Like, it's not like the guy's been, and he certainly had issues in the first half yesterday. But for him to just stick with that group, and again, it's not the most heralded group necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's not maybe the biggest NIL budget of those individuals. It's not the 5-star in Mbako, but yet he's stuck with that group. And again, that's different to me than I feel like we've seen with Woodson. So I think some credit to him and certainly that entire staff. NCAA tournament-wise, 2 wins in the last month. To many, it sounds ludicrous to even act like Indiana is a tournament team, but they are. They are right there. I mean, they are legit bubble contender. Their best aspect of the bubble is they have no bad losses and they have some really good wins. 4 games left in the regular season. We'll see what happens in the Big Ten tournament. What do you think they need to do to secure one of 68?
I definitely think you got to finish out with all wins in the 4 regular season games, and it wouldn't hurt if you win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. Now, of course, Indiana's history in the Big Ten tournament, as we all know, not great. But if they can do something in there, that'd be important. I think the game that's a must-win for them for sure. I think Penn State's obviously struggling. Washington is not a great team. Those are the 2 teams that are at the bottom of the Big Ten standings. So, on paper, those should be 2 wins that Indiana can get.
Those are quad 2 games.
Yeah, right,
for those that want to nerd out about it.
The game you've got to win, though, is the one at Oregon. Because if you can win at Oregon, that's going to turn John Rothstein's head and Seth Davis's head and all the people that are on the committee. They're going to go, whoa, Indiana beat Oregon at Oregon. Oregon just beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin in overtime. So that would be a quality win that you could get on the road, just kind of like the Michigan State win on the road turned heads. So I think winning out, getting to 20 wins would help, and making a run some way, somehow in the Big Ten tournament would really go a long way to helping you, make your tournament resume what it is and get yourself off the bubble.
That's a week from Tuesday, by the way, at Oregon. That's the late tip.
Yeah, the late tip.
That's the 9 o'clocker coming up here.
Yeah, Don Fisher loves late tips.
Sure.
Loves them. Loves 9 o'clock tip-offs.
I can only imagine Don's thoughts on this West Coast trip upcoming here. At Washington Saturday, at Oregon on Tuesday.
He's nicknamed the Night Owl, right?
Oh,
Night
yeah,
Owl,
yeah.
Night Owl Fisher.
Chance for him to get some golf in, though.
There you go.
Yep.
Those Oregon golf course is pretty nice.
Oh,
out
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Last one for me. I don't know if you can even touch on this, but any thoughts on who you'd like to see replace Mike Woodson, as far as who's been on the short list, who's been mentioned, anything like that, or you're kind of keeping all ears open?
I mean, there's a lot of great candidates. Chris Beard has got a great record. One guy I like a lot, and I don't know how much he is on Indiana's radar, but I pay closer attention to smaller college games than most people. But Ben McCollum at Drake has done an unreal job. I hate to give Jake Query credit on this, but I have to. He did mention that McCollum would be a good candidate, and he's the whole reason I started looking into McCollum. His record's unreal.
Dominant in the Division II ranks,
right,
for those unfamiliar with him. He's only been at Drake for 1 year.
Right, yeah, but he got the Drake job because of how good he's been at that level. And then of course I just kind of knew, hey, selfishly, I've interviewed Brad Stevens twice. I would have loved to have seen Brad, but we know that wasn't going to happen. Listen, there's no shortage of really good candidates out there. I just think what I want to see Indiana do, and I think Scott Dolson will do this correctly, is let's take our time. Let's make sure that we have the right guy. Let's not rush things, because you want to make sure that he checks certain boxes, but that he's also a proven winner at the college level. I think that's what Scott Dolson went through with Cignetti when he hired a football coach. I want a proven football coach who is a winner to come in here, who's used to winning. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of candidates out there like Beard and McCollum. The Iowa State coach, Olsenberger's a good example of a winner, but I don't think he's leaving Iowa State. I don't think Bruce Pearl's going to leave Auburn. Those guys are winners too. There's just a lot of good candidates to choose from. No shortage of it.
Last guy that needs an ego stroke, by the way, is Jake Query.
I know, sorry. But, I got to give credit where credit's due.
How dare you, sir?
How dare me? Yes.
Look at that door behind you, John. It's not big enough to fit the Jake Query ego in there. Inside IU basketball, is that tonight?
That is tonight, yes.
Okay.
Don's got Yasir Rosemond coming on tonight with to talk about that. Yasir had the scout on the Purdue game.
He was on the postgame show yesterday with you guys.
Yes,
right?
did a
and I know
great
Don
job.
has said this to John, but just for our audience that hasn't heard this, the understanding the remainder of the season is pregame, postgame, inside IU basketball shows. Mike Woodson will not be doing those.
Correct.
Those will be passed off to assistants.
And there will also be a couple of inside IU basketball shows left in the season where Terry Morin, the women's basketball coach will step in.
And they're kind of flirting with the bubble too.
They
right?
are. But they had a tough loss at Michigan State yesterday.
Big win late last week, right over Ohio State.
That win over Ohio State was good, but Michigan State's tough to play, and they were playing at the same time IU was playing Purdue, and they just couldn't quite get it done in the fourth quarter. But they're right there in the mix as well.
That is the voice of John Herrick, LCC and Borden. Is that what you got?
Yes, LCC and Borden.
10:30 on Saturday.
Yep, 10:30 Saturday morning at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. So, two teams I have had Lafayette Central Catholic before, never had Borden.
And LCC upset Marquette.
Yes,
I think
correct.
Central, who was number 1 in 1A. So Rensselaer Central, South Knox 2A, 3A's undefeated Greensburg and Norwell in the 4A game. Shout out to the great Stephen Thomas. LN, they will take on Warsaw. Warsaw upset HSE. Number 1. So weather-wise, looks pretty good. I know we always flirt with the snow during boys sectionals, girls state finals. Weather looks outstanding for everybody traveling here this week. John, thank you, sir.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
That's John Herrick from the IU Radio Network. Of course, you hear him pregame and halftime with Don Fisher, Eric Soar. We should mention this, Mark. We talked a little bit about coaching candidates right there. It was announced. It's kind of ironic. We've had back-to-back Friday news dumps for Indiana in regards to their coaching search. You had the broken Valentine of Brad Stevens the previous Friday.
Mm-hmm.
This past Friday, you had the Dusty May extension.
Yep.
Matt Norlander from CBS Sports had the official quote on that. I'm trying to see if I could find it here. Norlander wrote, "The larger question, despite the new agreement, is Indiana now fully off the table?" Dusty May's quote, "I think it makes it obvious. I'm staying at Michigan. I really wasn't interested in leveraging and negotiating." And so there you go.
Where do you think that puts the short list for those like Scott Dolson and stuff? Are they crossing off the top 2 candidates on their list now?
I think that's probably the right way to look at it. Yeah, I think your dream guys or your tier A guys, those are probably now out. I think when we've had Jeff Rabjohns on now, this probably would have been a week plus ago. That's kind of where you figured Indiana would start. And again, Indiana's got a huge head start on this. So now you get to that, how you view the second tier. I mean, certainly John went over a lot of names right there. I'll continue to throw Shaka Smart's name in there. I just think stylistically you would really like that style. Frankly, it looks a lot like what the second half looked like yesterday from a suffocation standpoint on the defensive end. I know he didn't have great success at Texas, but I think the fact that he's kind of been at a top level, I think would be able to handle. I mean, there's just a lot that goes in with being the Indiana basketball coach. I mean, feel the atmosphere inside of that building yesterday. I mean, again, you are
waves
booed off
of emotion.
You are booed off the floor, and again, understandably.
Yeah.
And then the second half, it's one of the loudest venues in college basketball, and that's what makes it such a passionate fan base and such a diehard group. And when it's going well, you love that. But handling it during the lows, because there inevitably will be that, is something that you're going to have to deal with. And like Mick Cronin had a quote last week, complaining about the Pauley Pavilion crowd with UCLA. I'm like, dude, if you think that is up and down and volatile, imagine being inside of Assembly Hall for 20-some games each and every year. So that type of personality, I'd probably add that to John's list. I think the proven Signetti type of resume, certainly Dolson, I think, will probably have that as a safety guard. But I think also, does this person have the personality and the skin to be able to handle this sort of job?
I think it's almost a blessing in disguise the last 2 Fridays for IU fans, because Dusty May and Brad Stevens were kind of pie-in-the-sky candidates. So now that those 2 are off the table, it's kind of a nice reset for the head coaching search. Like, okay, the dream candidates are gone. Where are we at now? How do we evaluate these coaching candidates from here on out? I think it's almost a good thing, because now, IU fans don't have to give their hopes up. The chat boards aren't lighting up for Dusty May in Bloomington and Brad Stevens leaving Boston and all that. We kind of have a nice reset in this head coaching search, which is more of like a reality check as well.
I think the official numbers, the buyout didn't increase by a ton, $7.5 million for Dusty May. His annual contract increased by $1 million annually. I do think it's a fair debate to have that you probably waited a year too long.
Yep.
As
you broke your mic right it's you right back from vacation. You've done it again.
Right on cue. I was looking at that screw up there thinking, I'm going to break it before 9:59.
I saw dangling there. I was like, it's a matter of time.
Here I am at 8:16. Luckily, we're going to hit a morning check down here in a few. I did want to hit on a little Pacer action. They are wire to wire yesterday. I thought the Halliburton stat line, that was one of the better games that he's had in a while. The point total, the 12 assists, the 1 turnover in 30 minutes. It's exactly what you would want from your $200 million guy. And tonight, Mark, I can't wait. I think anytime it's Denver, Jokic had some big games against the Pacers in that building. You always circle that one. But just the back-to-back, Denver's not on the back-to-back. Denver is coming off a loss Saturday against the Lakers. This is a marquee one tonight inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I can't wait. This is probably one of the more anticipated home games of the season, I would say. At least me personally, but Pacers fans as well. One of the few times get to see one of the marquee West teams out here and take an L. Are you going to be able to handle that? Is that going to get fixed?
No, I'm going to try and screw it back in and also talk at the same time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do you think I'll be able to do that?
We'll see. Can you multitask? This is the day after a vacation.
As soon as I raise my arms, it's unbelievable how much my gut has grown in 1 week from being out.
What do you think? What do you attribute that to? Is it just the alcohol, or is it just?
I think it's both.
All things
I think it's both. I mean, like, you go to the grocery earlier in the week, and you get like late in the week, you're like, well, we got to eat it all, and it's just kind of like, well, should I have eaten it all?
Now, Ashley,
should I just chalked it up here.
Ashley, who is
but it's probably mostly like the beer at 12:02.
My wife, Ashley, who grew up in Florida most of her life, she asked the very pertinent question that I needed to ask you, and that is, when you guys go grocery shopping, are you going to Publix?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Because she was like, that's a cardinal sin if you're not.
Yeah, Anna Maria Island is where we were. I don't know if you're familiar with that area. We flew into Sarasota. They got a nice new terminal in that airport. But
Sarasota Airport is one of the best because it's small, but you can get in and out relatively quickly.
I feel like some good amount of directs from Indy.
Oh, yeah. You can get like $19 flights at times.
19? Jeez, are you flying the plane?
Well, I'm just saying there are some operations out there, if you don't mind saving a few bucks, a few shekels, especially with a young family, you can get it going. You want to get into a morning check down right now?
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into it while Kevin tries to fix his microphone. Well, Kevin is playing with his microphone. Let's dive into a morning check down on this Monday morning. We talked about it with John Herrick.
I don't know if that's what I wanted to hear, but well, here I am.
It's not code for anything. IU got the win, 73-58 over Purdue. Weird, like a tale of two halves. We've said it all. It's generic to say that, but that's exactly what happened. Purdue dominated the first half, and then all of a sudden the switch flipped, and IU got going. 21 points they held the Purdue Boilermakers in the second half, and it was firing on all cylinders for IU. That crowd was electric. Matt Painter, after the game, discussed what might have happened in that second half.
That's what's frustrating because, we've been able to show poise. We've been able to have composure, especially getting on the road, being able to play. Not always. I think it affects everybody at some point. And to say we lost our composure is an understatement.
15 points apiece for Trey Galloway and Malik Renew. For Purdue, Fletcher Lawyer, 20 points, but rough days for Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren, especially in that second half.
So they combined Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren for 2 points after halftime, no field goals, and a slew of turnovers. And I just thought the Braden stuff was just, a lot of it was so uncharacteristic, too. You had that one play in the backcourt where he's like on the ground, throws it right to Anthony Leal. I'm like, gosh, that's just not what you're used to from, certainly one of the more experienced point guards, one of the best point guards, frankly, in college basketball. So beyond needed for Indiana and their NCAA tournament hopes. So now Purdue, it is the question of where will your rim protection be? Where will your interior defense be here down the stretch? That is 4 straight losses for Matt Painter's bunch.
For IU, Penn State on Wednesday at home at Assembly Hall, and then for Purdue, UCLA at home, and that is on Friday.
Speaking of home, the Pacers back at home again. It's 4 straight here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse to start the second half of the season. They got win number 2 yesterday over the Clippers. No Norman Powell, no Kawhi Leonard for the Clippers. So the Pacers catch the break injury-wise. We have seen them, especially early in the season, struggle, though, with those advantages. They did not at all. They led from the opening tip, got off to a great start, and really were in full control. Now, it will be a back-to-back tonight. Again, Denver favored by about 4 points. They will have the Raptors coming up on Wednesday. Rick Carlisle will join us coming up tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
I would say notable on the women's front, we saw the number 1 overall Notre Dame Fighting Irish go down to NC State yesterday.
Right?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I was wondering if you were hanging on for dear life watching that game or not.
I was, but Neil Ivey and company, they still should get a 1 seed here. They've had a tremendous season, and they will win it all here coming up.
Yeah, and then we gave away tickets over on Friday's show to the Butler and UConn game, and boy, oh boy, did Gino Auriemma and Paige Becker show up because they blew the doors off of Butler, 86-47. I don't know if I've seen a box score where 3 of the 4 quarters a team has scored single digits, but that's what happened to the Butler women, unfortunately, on Saturday afternoon.
Corbin, let's do another 4-pack. Wednesday night, Rick Pitino and company inside of Hinkle Fieldhouse, Butler and St. John's. It's a late one, 9 o'clock, so be prepared to obviously stay up late for that one. If you want to go, we'll give away a 4-pack right now, 317-239-1070. Other items on my end, Mark Dykton will be over at the Combine. That's the convention center each of the next 4 days. So Tuesday through Friday, we'll have shows. Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen will meet the media tomorrow. We'll have Ballard on our show, it sounds like, coming up Wednesday morning. So, again, we'll be over there later in the week. And certainly very grateful to see that the IU Indy Jags, the old IUPUI, of course, Paul Casaro's team, that they got home safely yesterday from Northern Kentucky. Some horrific images that we tweeted out earlier in the show from their bus that caught on fire. I mean,
has there been a cause of what caused that? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. I mean, to say their bus was fried would probably be an understatement. I mean, the bus is just, I mean, it's absolutely fried. It sounded like there were some losses of belongings and, bags and stuff like that. But the most important aspect is everyone made it off the bus safely. They were able to get a new bus and get home yesterday from their game with Northern Kentucky. So,
in all honesty, it looks like almost like what a vehicle would have looked like in the California wildfires. That's how bad it was.
Right.
Where it's just completely torched.
Yeah, just absolutely awful there. But again, they were able to get home safely. First race of the IndyCar season down in St. Pete coming up this weekend. And I love this. It is the 20-year anniversary of the inaugural St. Pete race. That was won by Dan Weldon. So they will have Dan Weldon's wife and his oldest son, Sebastian, take part in the opening race ceremonies. I think Susie's going to do the green flag, if I'm not mistaken. And Sebastian Weldon, who's 16 years old, he's going to drive one of the pace cars. So love that from IndyCar here. This will be noon, this will be Sunday, and this will be Fox, the debut of Fox. The commercials keep on coming there. So Streets of St. Pete, Pato Award, your defending champ as we get the IndyCar season underway.
Well, if the broadcast is anything like the promos have been, it should be a home run. Because Fox has done a bang-up job with these promotions for the sport and everything like that. So I'm actually really looking forward to the season opener for IndyCar.
I'm looking forward to that. On the other side, GOATs of the weekend. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter with you here. Thanks for starting your week with us. All right, it's Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter here on this Monday morning. Thank you for starting the week with us. Weather-wise, looks outstanding as the Combine descends upon Indianapolis, so that means the national media won't bitch too much. And locally, it should mean, hopefully, a smooth schedule week for boys sectional play. We have the parent show. Or actually, I think boys sectional play is next weekend. Girls state finals, I should say, coming up this weekend. But if you look on the horizon, again, hopefully, fingers crossed, you won't get the old sectional snow or anything like that. So we'll have Class A and 2A, 10:30, 12:30 coming up on Saturday, 6:30 and 8:30 coming up Saturday night.
You were enjoying the alcohol in the sun in Florida last week when you had Claire Clark of Visit Indy on, and we kind of said, like, what's the projections of, like, you know, the Combine staying in Indy? And they said, obviously, they have a book through 2026, and they're hoping to push it beyond that, but there are obviously outside forces that would like to see it go elsewhere, but they're going to do everything in their power to keep it in Indianapolis long term. And she said what also helps, too, is when the national media does come here, they praise Indianapolis about how well run it is and all that stuff. So that the national media putting Indianapolis in a good light always helps, kind of like the NFL. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should leave it in Indy.
And again, we do have it through 2026, which I think there's been a couple of times in recent years we've gotten to this point, Mark, of Combine Week, and it hasn't been official that it's coming back for the next year. So that's good news. But I did find it interesting. I think this happened maybe over the weekend. Maybe it was Friday. Did you see that the Big Ten Conference is moving their football media day, which was at Lucas Oil last year, to Vegas? And I think if you asked people, visit Indy, Indy Sports Corp, of course, if you asked them what city do people maybe A, don't talk about enough, or is a serious candidate to want a lot of these events, they would say Vegas as like a very real contender pushing for this stuff. Like, you wouldn't think Big Ten Media Day is, you know, the biggest deal in the world, but Vegas, without a Big Ten team, wants it. Is it only a matter of time? Bless you, Corbin. Is it only a matter of time before the Big Ten championship game, you know, tries to pivot away from Indy and goes out to a place like Vegas with Western teams in there? So I think that's kind of the city to watch. Now, frankly, July 22nd through 24th in Vegas sounds like living hell.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
I mean, can't imagine the temperature out there during that time. You're just
even the devil's sweating.
You're literally melting out there. But do we start to see this? And with the Big Ten Conference, you know, we'll have the men's and women's tournament here over at Gamebridge coming up in a few weeks. But, you know, do we start to see a little bit of a, hey, we need to make sure that, again, the Western schools feel a little bit of love from that? You know, the ACC tournament, for example, it had been such a staple in Greensboro for all those years, and they've rotated it to D.C., and I want to say it was even in New York maybe one of those years. So that'll be something to keep an eye on.
In these last 10 years, Las Vegas has just emerged as like a superpower all of a sudden in the sports world, where as it was always kind of like, oh yeah, Vegas, like, you know, teams didn't want to touch it. And now it's kind of like, well, now they're getting their own pro teams. They're getting all kinds of events out there. And now that sports books have been embraced in the pro and college sports realm, Vegas is all of a sudden a superpower in the sports industry.
Well, certainly. And, you know, again, the NFL going there, I think it was a huge, huge domino. You know, one thing to point out, too, we was over at, I guess this would have been the Friday before the Big Ten football championship, Oregon and Penn State here. Went over to Sports Court, had a luncheon with Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner. And he had mentioned that when they opened up the voting process, I forget if it was Big Ten presidents or Big Ten ADs, but the vote was unanimous to keep the game at Lucas Oil Stadium. I did find that interesting, of ADs and or presidents, again, with now 4 Western schools. And frankly, if you're Minnesota, for example, or whatever, you're Northwestern, is there any appeal to want to try and have that near you, or at least appease the people in your own backyard of like, hey, we're the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and we're trying to get it to be here at whatever their stadium's called there, the Viking Stadium. But for the unanimous vote to happen, I did find that to be interesting. Of like, okay, so at least for the powers that be, they still view Indy from the game standpoint. The media day is a media day, whatever. Yes, it's a multi-day event. Sure, you know, whatever. A couple hundred media probably would attend something like that. Frankly, I don't think a couple hundred people are going to be flying to Vegas in late July to attend that. But I did think that that was kind of a feather in the cap of Indy, of like, all right, a lot of these people in important positions of power with, you would think, cities and geographic regions that would love to host are still very content with Indianapolis.
That also tells me that the unanimous vote tells me that Penn State's AD doesn't have the ear of James Franklin, because James Franklin would say, "Get the hell out of there."
I forgot about that.
What do you call it? A
JV
JV setup?
He called it a JV setup.
Yeah. What a clown.
I was so glad Notre Dame won that.
Me too.
Oh, I hated him.
Yeah. So that's good that he's not taking any advice.
And
from
did him
James
and Tom
Franklin.
Allen not see eye to eye? Is that why Tom Allen left and went to Clemson?
I don't know. That's another one. Yeah, that went under the radar too, I think. Yeah. Who knows? Tom Allen bigger and better, I would say, probably.
Indiana all over Purdue in the second half. We'll certainly get back to that. It was quite the impressive second half. I think what was extra impressive, too, for me, Marcus, sometimes you see these rivalry games and home road atmospheres. You see like a huge discrepancy from behind the arc. And that's how the upset happens. Boom, all of a sudden a team that hasn't made threes all year long, they hit 10 or 11, and that's how they win the game. If you look at the final numbers, Indiana from behind the arc was 4 of 19. Purdue was 7 of 16. Like, if you'd have told an Indiana fan before the game, you will be 22% worse than Purdue from behind the arc, the foul line's not going to be a huge difference when you look at it at the end of the game, you probably wouldn't feel very good about the victory. But when Purdue turns it over 9 more times than you, that tells a huge, huge picture.
Yeah, I still want to know how much of the influence was the chair. That's going to be like IU lore now. Is the chair made a return?
Do
and
we
all of a sudden
believe that was the real chair?
It looked like it had to have had a paint job, or it was very well stored at this point, 40 years later. It didn't look like it had a nick on it at all. No scuffs, no gum underneath.
When he told the story afterwards, I think he said, probably is the chair. Well, probably,
Are you doing like a 23andMe with the chair?
Yeah, I don't know if I care that much, to be honest with you.
I know. That's fine. You want to say that played a role? I would also say, like, did you just bust that off for Purdue, or like, if you would have had that all season long, could we be talking about a different
Are we going to see
situation?
it Wednesday night against Penn State?
I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. Do you keep it now, or do you just put it back away into wherever it's being stored at?
The chair travels to Washington and to Oregon.
Yeah.
Sparks the run.
It's like the Stanley Cup. It comes out of like a case.
IU advances to the Elite Eight for the first time in, 20-some years, and Mike Woodson now is coming back as head coach.
White gloves bring it in. It's the chair. Set it down. Oh, my God.
Tim Carl's treating that like it's one of the players that he's taking care of.
People can line up, and, Hoosier Hysteria, people can line up and take pictures with it.
Oh, you'd get a lot. I mean, you imagine the NIL, the people taking pictures and being able to touch the chair.
People do it all the time. They Lucas Oil Stadium, and they do the tours, and you go in the Colts locker room, like, that's where Andrew Luck's locker was, and people run over there to take a picture.
Let's hit our GOATs of the weekend. Mark Dykton, the reports came out, I think this was Friday as well, that I would argue one of the greatest players at his position in NFL history, and I would also argue one of the greatest players this state has ever produced in terms of an NFL talent, is going to hang it up. And that would be Zach Martin, the offensive guard for the Dallas Cowboys. The offensive lineman's stats for Zach Martin, the Chatard Notre Dame product, are just absolutely laughable when you read them out loud. They are insane. First off, 9-time All-Pro. He had 7 holding penalties in his career. 9 times voted All-Pro, 7 of them first team. So it's not like he's just, second team on an annual basis. That's tied for the most of any NFL guard. We'll see if Quentin Nelson could maybe get there when it's all said and done. But think about that. 9-time All-Pro, and he has 7 holding penalties?
Unbelievable.
In his career. Warren Sharp had this. 6,659 pass blocking snaps in the career of Zach Martin. 0 accepted holding penalties. So all his holdings came from run plays. 0 accepted holding penalties on pass blocking snaps. I mean, just
absolutely absurd.
Absolutely astonishing for Zach Martin. So 34 years old. The GOAT of, I would argue, guards in the NFL, or certainly players from the state. Any sort of Mount Rushmore you're going to do. Zach Martin reportedly hanging it up.
So is that your good that he's retired, or your bad that he's hanging it up?
That's my hat tip good. That is my you are a GOAT. I
wasn't sure which way that was going.
No. That is a 34 years old. It's a hell of a run. Been in the league for over a decade. Zach Martin, my GOAT from the weekend.
My go to the weekend, and this is maybe, a playoff of the Four Nations, over past the Four Nations. But like I said, I consumed a bit more hockey than I have in the recent years, and Alex Ovechkin is my good. He had a hat trick in yesterday's 7-3 rout of the Edmonton Oilers. That puts him just 13 goals shy of breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time NHL record in career goals. So the old Russian still got it. Maybe he's got fresh legs since Russia wasn't in the Four Nations, but Alex Ovechkin still getting it done right now. So 13 shy of breaking the Great One's record.
It's kind of wild when old players in hockey are still doing it at a high level. I'm like, how is that possible?
He and Crosby still doing it, and they've done it with the same franchise in their entire careers, which is very rare these days, too.
Sport just looks so physically demanding. My negative GOAT of the week would be my waistline, my gut, my stomach. I mean, I can feel it right. I can feel there's an extra roll in there. I told you
That's why you're wearing the hoodie today, right?
I know. I was trying to cover it up. Notre Dame, nice win over Pittsburgh. Good to see the Micah Shrewsbury message finally getting to the boys. As I pulled up the chair to kind of sit here in front of the microphone to start the show today, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I really hitting the desk already? So, yes, a few too many beers down in Florida, a few too many rum runners, Mai Tais. I'm thinking about it. I don't think I had a pina colada, which I usually do, but the waistline is struggling here on this Monday morning, man.
You're okay to have a vacation belly. That's fine.
I'm dragging.
We're all insulating in the wintertime. You're just doing your job. My bad go to the weekend. The news that Greg Popovich not expected back this season. He's still recovering from a stroke. Not that I was holding my breath that Greg Popovich would come back, but just a string of just bad news that the San Antonio Spurs have had post All-Star break. This following up the news that Victor Wembanyama is out for the season with a blood clot in his shoulder. So a team that was probably one of the more intriguing ones at the trade deadline and with the San Antonio Spurs, now all of a sudden it's they can't catch a break. So now Greg Popovich not expected back. Wembanyama's out for the season. It stinks to be a San Antonio Spurs fan, which I'm not, but I'm a fan of the NBA, and that stinks that Victor Wembanyama and Greg Popovich probably not going to be in the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, very selfishly from a Pacers standpoint, at least they did get Wembanyama. Again, I know the game was in Paris, but entertainment-wise, I enjoyed watching them. Tonight, by all accounts, I haven't looked at Denver's latest injury report. Jokic is supposed to play, I think.
Yeah.
So, when you think back to, I'm trying to think, LeBron, they haven't played here yet, right? LeBron rested, and Luka, rested the first game there. Steph obviously sat out this game. I know that was a huge storyline back when it happened. By the way, shout out Steph Curry. I don't know if he does this on a frequent basis in visiting games, but did you see he invited a handful of Steph Curry related fans into the locker room before that Pacers Warriors game, when he wasn't playing?
That's good to see.
You think he does? I mean, I guess I would venture to guess he does that most places if he's not playing in that game. I mean, obviously you can't appease everybody that's in the building, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To at least do something.
Well, considering a lot of NBA players these days are taking rest days and stuff, when you're not playing and people paid money hand over fist to kind of see, it'd be nice to.
Where does the Jokic appeal rank?
I don't know. I'm always trying to figure that out too.
Over under 27 Jokic jerseys inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse tonight.
What was that number?
27.
I would say under.
We need a counter.
Well, I'm sure someone will be in attendance that works here. Walk around with one of those things, like when you walk through an amusement park or you go to Menards, there's always that guy clicking the thing. Have somebody do that. I say under, though.
We're going to send Mark and the girls over there to count how many Jokic jerseys are in the building.
All right, you two go this way. I mean, the young one will go this way.
4-point underdog tonight, the Pacers against the Nuggets here after a very impressive
Meet you by the Dippin' Dot stand.
Over the Clippers last night. Are we worried about Matthew Stafford's future with the Rams? Some people have asked me about my Colts thoughts on that. It was certainly a topic a few years ago. Colts didn't have much interest. We'll explain more here coming up in a bit. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter on a Monday. This time tomorrow will be over at the Convention Center, NFL Combine in town. You get workouts a little bit later in the week, early in the week. It'll be a lot of GM head coach interviews. We'll hear from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen tomorrow. They will make appearances on our airwaves. Both are Wednesday, now that I think about it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Ballard with us around 8 a.m. Wednesday. Shane Steichen going to be on with Jake coming up. I think John gets Lou Anarumo tomorrow over at the Combine. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter here with you. I do want to get to, I don't know if you call the Matthew Stafford stuff like smoke, but there's at least something going on there.
Yeah.
About his future with the Rams.
It seems kind of like they're just like, you go do you. You figure out like if you can find a deal or something.
Yeah, and obviously the Cooper Kupp, like, hey, we're going to trade you is kind of, but, you know.
Like a changing of the guard in LA.
I know, but I don't know. The Rams it's like a pesky little team. I mean, they give the Eagles all they could handle in that game, and I tend to think if the weather was a little bit better, I think the Rams would have beaten Philadelphia in that game.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they were kind of close, and then they're kind of like, all right, you older guys, you get moving. Get to stepping. Go see what we can do here. They're trying to change it up when they seem like they were kind of on the come up. So I don't really know what they're doing out there all of a sudden.
We do want to go back to yesterday in Bloomington, just the 180. And you've said this a couple different times here on this Monday morning, Mark, of, it sounds elementary to say a tale of two halves, but you're exactly right. I mean, it's the perfect description of up 12 at half, and then all of a sudden it all changing for you. I mean, Indiana is booed off the floor at halftime. You're down 12. You're staring at a fifth straight home loss. Your NCAA tournament hopes would probably be all but gone. And then you end up beating your rival by 15.
I know.
And that second half was never – I mean, Purdue never hit a shot where I'm like, oh, is Mike Woodson going to take a timeout? There was never
Here
that
comes
moment.
the run.
Right. There was never the Assembly Hall faithful, all kind of clapping together like, come on, boys, here we go. There was none of that. It was Matt Painter, 2 timeouts in the first 6 minutes. Braden Smith turning the ball over like you've never really seen before, especially in the backcourt. And next thing you knew, I mean, Indiana was in full control of a game that they were down 12 at halftime.
Is there a piece of furniture in Purdue lore that we can bust out for Matt Painter to get off the 4-game losing streak? Is there an armchair? Is there like an ottoman?
I think he needs to add maybe an arm to like Caleb First or Trey Kaufman-Renn to help from a rim protection standpoint. I do think, and I know this is a little bit deep in the weeds with Purdue, but I think you're starting to feel that Daniel Jacobson injury from the opening week. And I know that wasn't a major storyline a lot of people maybe pointed to, but obviously Zach Edey goes pro. Purdue brings in Daniel Jacobson, 7'3" center, that had a very nice run with the Team USA. I want to say it was like their under-18 team this summer. And I think there was a thought, again, he's a freshman, but I think there was a thought that he will be able to provide a nice rim protection for you. It might not be dominant. It might not, be Dikembe Mutombo style, but at least have a little bit of a resistance. And I think you see this often in college basketball, Mark. Just simply having the presence of a player of that size, it deters guys from even attempting those shots. You watch the Indiana shots around the rim yesterday, and you go back to Wisconsin, you go back to Michigan State, some of these recent games that Purdue has lost. I mean, it's a layup line. And when Trey Kaufman-Renn gets that first foul, I didn't think Indiana did a great job enough in the first half of trying to get the second one on him. He was going Olay defense to avoid the second. And like that, I think, is such a major question that I don't know how Purdue answers it. And Matt Painter was very frustrated after the game. It was probably one of the more mad I've seen him in a post-game presser, just of, we didn't adhere to the scouting report enough. We should have packed the paint even more than they did. Well, the question I would have is, you just lost the game by 15 points, and the opponent went 4 of 19 from 3. What happens when you pack the paint and that team hits, 7 or 8 threes? I think that's probably the biggest question for Purdue. I like Braden Smith turning it over 6 times, Trey Kaufman-Renn looking like that in the second half. That's not going to happen on a frequent basis. But the inability to protect the rim and then therefore have to hope and pray the other team doesn't shoot the ball well from 3, that's going to be an issue.
Well, it struggles on both sides of the ball because defensively it's not looking good, but offensively you're not scoring at all. Like these last 4 games, the 4-game losing streak, they haven't cracked 74 points in 3 of the 4 losses. So the scoring has also not been there. So not only is your defense struggling, but you're also not getting the ball. You're not making it competitive. Like 73 points against Michigan, 66 points against Michigan State, 58 against Indiana. The only time you scored more than that was a loss to Wisconsin, with you scored 84 points. So the scoring has also dried up for Purdue. So they're not getting the shots that they were as much as, Braden Smith and whatnot were knocking down shots for a long period of time. The scoring has not been there either. So they're struggling on both sides of the floor.
Again, coming up this week, Indiana will have Penn State on Wednesday. They'll then Purdue will then host UCLA coming up on Friday. I look at IU the rest of the way and think if they got 4 wins, they'd probably be on the right side of the bubble come Big Ten tournament time. But that would still be playing with fire. Again, just to play out their schedule the rest of the way. Home to Penn State, at Washington, at Oregon, home to Ohio State. All of those are quad 2 besides at Oregon. So that's the one, like if you're going to get any of them, that's obviously the toughest one to get. But the one reason that we're talking about Indiana as a legit, bubbled team all of a sudden is because in the last month they've only won 2 games, but they're the 2 that stand out on the resume the most, at Michigan State and home to Purdue. So that's what will be in order. And for Purdue, at this point, you're strictly playing for seeding. You're not playing for a Big Ten title. Obviously, the hopes of a 1 seed or having your pathway maybe be through Lucas Oil Stadium in the regional round, that's gone.
How much of Purdue's struggles these last 4 games has that adjusted your expectations of what they can do in the tournament?
Yeah, I think it's just a reminder to me of the margin for error is just thin.
Mm-hmm.
And they played such good defense early on in the Big Ten calendar, and it's kind of like, well, was that real or was that not? I would probably argue it's not, is how it's played out here, of that was a little bit of an admiration in what they're truly like. And again, it's easier said than done to limit Braden Smith in the magnitude that Indiana did yesterday. And credit to Miles Rice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a player that I've said credit to him very often here this season, but I thought his defense was really key. Combine-wise, Mark, we'll get to a little bit more Colts talk coming up here in the 9 o'clock hour. Anything you're curious, again, tomorrow Ballard, tomorrow Steichen, what you will hear from them.
So more so on Ballard, because Steichen, he's not the strongest quote, and he's not going to tell us anything. I feel like anything you ask him from last season, he's going to say, well, we've moved past that. We've turned the page. We're on to next year.
A very politically correct way. He's not the strongest quote.
Yeah. Having to listen to a lot of Shane Steichen, I can tell you he's not. Chris Ballard, though, I would like to know, all this talk he did in his postseason press conference about he needs to change his philosophy come free agency and all that stuff. Does that come from ownership as well? Does he, aside from the salary cap limits, are the purse strings wide open for the Colts? They can go out and spend and get a day 1 talent or 2 out there. Are there any limits there? How much of a voice does Lou Anarumo have when it comes to defensive say? Is he going to say, we need to go get this guy for my system, or this guy that's on our roster does not fit my system, we need to try and move off of him? I'm curious about that kind of stuff. Is just how much entering this critical year for the Colts, do the coaches have a say in roster construction, or does Chris Ballard take the reins and say, oh, well, I'm the GM for a reason, let's follow my lead?
Yeah, I would say for Ballard specifically, are the words as emotionally charged as they seemed to be at the season-ending press conference last month? I thought it was a different sounding Ballard in a couple of areas that he usually doesn't sound like that. Mainly free agency, honestly. And again, 2 weeks from Wednesday, actually 2 weeks from today, is when things will get underway from that legal tampering period. So do you chalk that up to raw January emotion of the season just ended? And I'm pissed because, well, I should be pissed, but also because, I realize what my resume is. Has that changed at all a month in? Do they all of a sudden look at it and are a little bit more open-minded to it? That's a scary thought, if I'm going to insert my opinion, but that would be a question I have. Are the words as strong as they were back in January? Because, again, those words then were not, hey, free agency, paying B players A money, it's a dangerous game. They were, oh, we don't have enough competition. We don't have enough tough guys. I need to do a better job at identifying the free agents and then getting the ball across the goal line on those deals. I would say, are those words just as strong? And then from a personnel standpoint, the biggest name this time last year was Michael Pittman Jr. They clearly expressed a desire to retain him, which they did. What about Braden Smith? Because the Braden Smith one is a huge financial domino for the entire offseason. And it would also insert a second-year right tackle in Matt Gonzalez, theoretically. So that would probably be the biggest personnel question I have.
How will things be different? How can fans look at this offseason and say, okay, they did it differently? That would be my question to Chris Ballard. How will we know things are being done differently, not just from a money spending standpoint, but just from a philosophy standpoint?
Yeah, and just I don't know, maybe it's too deep of a question, but like, why should fans have hope?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ballard, I thought, gave the most candid comment of Irsay, Steichen, and Ballard postseason and saying, we're not close. Okay. You said that. That's a very honest phrase, in my opinion. Given the track record of 8 years, why should we're not close give fans optimism?
Mm-hmm.
What will be different,
Right.
to your point? And obviously actions will come here in a couple of weeks. Much more on the Colts front. Matthew Stafford, would that be a quarterback name? And kind of going back a few years ago, what exactly happened there and how all that played out? We'll throw some of that at you. Continue to talk Indiana and Purdue from yesterday and what was in a season that has mostly been one to forget. You could argue a Mike Woodson era as a head coach that's been one to forget. Certainly that second half yesterday is the exact opposite and a memorable one for Indiana fans in beating their rival, really dominating their rival in that second half. Much more, 9 o'clock hour fan morning show. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, and Corbin Lingenfelter. Nine o'clock hour on a Monday. We'll be over at the Convention Center coming up tomorrow. NFL Combine. I did feel like, I don't know if the Anthony Leal, Caleb First, which I thought was totally overblown. I thought maybe, blow the whistle and say, all right, boys, let's head back to the other end of the floor. No need to tack any fouls onto this or flagrant that. I did feel like the venom was inside of Assembly Hall of this season has stunk. We're done with Mike Woodson, but we still bleep and hate Purdue.
Yep.
I love that. I mean,
that was the vibe I
love
hoped we were getting.
That part of the rivalry still was very much alive.
Well, that's why
inside of Assembly Hall.
I was surprised on Friday when Greg Rakestraw said he didn't think it was a big game for either team. And I said, well, I feel like don't tell the fan bases that, because they will still take it to their grave that that's the biggest game. And especially both teams were limping into that game in Sunday. I was like, you can go either way there, whether Purdue needed to get off the schneid and get a win to kind of get their tournament hopes back on track, or just winning one for Mike Woodson and having some pride at Assembly Hall when your arch rival comes to town.
How crazy will it be to look back on the Mike Woodson era and say the coach that beat Matt Painter the most in those 4 years will be him?
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't put that on the resume.
No,
I don't think.
not. I mean, maybe that's how the Mike Woodson era will be remembered, of one that certainly didn't get much return on investment based off how much they're paying that roster, but they did beat Purdue, I guess, 4 times. And we'll see. And maybe we got a Big Ten tournament meeting still left on the horizon.
Let's see.
I think
That'd
that's
be nice.
probably a Scotty question to look up. Has it happened once? Is that right, Scotty? In the history of the Big Ten tournament? I think it might have been the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Indiana, Purdue, they will now shift gears. A couple home games coming up this week. Indiana hosts Penn State on Wednesday before they travel out west. Purdue's got UCLA coming up on Friday inside of Mackey Arena.
So last segment we talked about, we'll be out at the Combine all the rest of the week, and some thoughts of like what would we ask Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, and all that stuff. And one thing that kept percolating my brain was a question that I kind of posed near the end of the Colts season. If you're a Colts fan and you're talking Chris Ballard, you would ask Chris Ballard, what should Colts fans hang their hat on heading into 2025? Because the Tennessee Titans, the other teams in your division, the Tennessee Titans have the number 1 overall pick. They got a new stadium coming. So fans are hanging their hat on that. Okay, number 1 overall pick. We're going to see what happens there. We've got all kinds of optimism for what we can do there. There's a wave of change happening for Tennessee. For the Jaguars, same thing. New regime coming to town. What's going to happen there? Can they get Trevor Lawrence's career back on track? There's at least hope and optimism that the new regime can do that. For the Texans, they limped their ass into the playoffs. They struggled the last half of the season, but yet they still finished division champions with like a month left in the season. So they're feeling good about themselves too. Like, well, this division, we don't really have to work that hard. We can take the last month off, and we still cleared it by 4 games. If you're a Colts fan, though, what exactly are you hanging your hat on? Because you're running it back with Chris Ballard. You're running it back with Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. What exactly are Colts fans hanging their hat on in 2025? What is giving them optimism that things will be different this time in 2025?
It's a great question. I thought you laid that out nicely in regards to the rest of the division. Obviously, you've made a change defensively, so we'll see exactly what that leads to. But offensively, and with the most important player, you see at times, like Houston, for example, which is ludicrous to compare Houston to Indianapolis right now, but let's just do it because they're in the same division and both the quarterbacks are drafted in the same draft class. Houston has made a change to offensive coordinator. The Colts have elected to say offensively, we're not going to do any of that. We're not going to make wholesale changes staff-wise. Obviously, Shane Steichen has a huge influence offensively, but I had a question. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. I thought the Colts should have explored making some staff changes offensively. For whatever reason, the message that has been tried to get into Anthony Richardson just hasn't worked. I would argue on or off the field. So that was a question that I have of, are you just banking on his maturation, of him looking in the mirror and saying enough is enough? So the voices of Jim Bob Cooter as OC, as Cam Turner as offensive as quarterbacks coach, some of their other offensive assistants, that's still the same people, same voices. They are banking on the healthy offseason. Point blank period for Anthony Richardson, of like his first healthy offseason, which I do think is an important thing to point out. I do think the first healthy offseason is a key part in this. But again, it's not just he's healthy. There's still so many layers to that onion for Richardson, which I think makes the parlay of him hitting all those so difficult. Of even if he does magically start becoming Greg Maddux with his accuracy, and he starts behaving like winning the Mental Truster Award at the state finals coming up this week, and they'll be handed out each of those. Like, even if he does all that, you still have the and this was actually Chris Ballard's biggest question that he had at the end of the season. Can you run an effective offense with him and keep him healthy?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so difficult. So I guess to answer the question, Mark, it would be, we're going to do things differently defensively. I would argue they waited 1 year too long a la Quinn Buckner's influence on Indiana, waiting 1 year too long with Mike Woodson. And then the second part of that would be the healthy offseason for Richardson. And who knows? I mean, maybe, and I'm not holding my breath for any of this, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard will have some epiphany that they reveal of, hey, this is what we're doing specifically with Richardson. So remember, at the end of the year, it was still very much a, well, we're going to take our time. We're going to go through that. We're going to formulate a plan for him. Okay, what does that plan look like? Is it just this Josh Allen, fundamental guru? I forget how Allen exactly penned the name of Chris Hess, the guy that helped him with his accuracy early in his NFL career. Is it just that for Richardson? Does that be the end all, be all in terms of curing him?
I can visually see the lights lighting up on the switchboard at 56th Street for the season ticket holders. Lou Anarumo and Anthony Richardson. Light it up. Let's bring it back. Rolling it out in 2025. Hang your hat on that, Indianapolis.
Now,
I don't know if that would do that much for fan bases and everything, but that is where we're at because you're hoping that Anthony Richardson takes a stride, multiple strides, quite honestly, from year 1 and 2 to year 3, because you have some big financial decisions coming up. There's a 5th-year option decision coming up in the near future. So there's a lot riding on him just not only taking one leap forward, but multiple leaps forward. And quite frankly, I don't know if those expectations that need to be met in my eyes will be met for him to really change the opinion of what the Colts have in him as a quarterback.
Now, I will say this. What happens this week? And the answer would be what happens behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Because this time, a handful of years ago, the early talks began of DeForest Buckner coming here for the 13th overall pick. That would have, you could trade the 14th overall pick for a pretty star-studded name. Is that anything that they look to explore at all? And again, that's going to be a behind-the-scenes topic, but do they view the 14th overall pick as, hey, we need a young piece? I would argue defensively, Mark, especially, and even offensively, but mainly defensively, they lack a 22 to 25-year-old, 20, maybe even 6 or 7-year-old that I look at and say, that's a cornerstone defender to build around.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe Latu has a huge second-year jump, and all of a sudden he becomes that. But, if you look at their best defensive players, they're older.
Yep.
So do they view the 14th overall pick and say, no, we need a young blue-chip guy that can be on the side of Lucas Oil Stadium moving forward? Or do they say, hey, that is a great trade piece for our new defensive coordinator or a veteran offensively to help out our young quarterback? Again, that's more of a behind-the-scenes question, but that's what this week is all about. You get all these agents that descend upon Indianapolis, and among the free agent topics that get discussed and the re-signings and all of that with 2 weeks to go, those potential trade talks do happen.
That was one of the questions James and I had on Wednesday when you were having technical difficulties. I said, if I told you the Colts have the 14th overall pick and Tyler Warren is there, would you rather use the 14th overall pick on Tyler Warren? Or have I told you could take the 14th overall pick and a combination of other draft picks? Would you rather go get a Myles Garrett or a Micah Parsons or a Max Crosby for Lou Anarumo to add on that defensive side? I think I'm at the point where I would say, while it would be nice to have those pieces on the defensive side, that's also like a push over the top move. And I don't think the Colts are there. That's a move that, you just made the wild card or something. We need one more thing. I could see the Washington Commanders making a move like that, where you have the quarterback in Jaden Daniels. You can use one more piece to push you over the top. I could see a move like that from that organization. Not so much the Colts, where the Colts are still trying to figure themselves out of where they fit exactly in this AFC picture. And like we talked in the division, they lost that by December. So that seems like a move that pushes you over the top. Not necessarily a move I would see the Colts making. That's a luxury draft trade, in my opinion, for the Colts. Mike.
Sorry about that. Josh sent me this over the weekend, and it was regards to the Matthew Stafford news. And I don't know. I probably should be paying a little bit more attention. I think it might have been when I had a beer at noon, which seemed to be on a daily basis when I was down in Florida.
Singing Mr. Brightside as loud as you can.
Yeah, chanting USA after their goals. The Rams have given Stafford permission to talk to other teams. Is that the general gist of it?
Yes, that's how I took it.
Okay. Still under contract,
Yep.
Obviously. Josh asked, could you refresh our memories on Matthew Stafford of the Colts a few years ago? I believe that was the 21 offseason. And if the person is still in the organization that had hesitancy about doing that.
I believe he is.
My answer would be yes.
Yes, he is.
That person is still in the organization. And my thoughts generally to Stafford, and I think you could pull out audio from 4 years ago now, and this would back up. I think the judging of Matthew Stafford, the critical judgment of Matthew Stafford of what the Lions had team success-wise with him, I would argue was wildly unfair. And I would say that the type of player that the Rams have gotten and the team success the Rams have had with him would indicate that that is the correct stance to have back in January of 2021. And so I think that the Colts had, again, hesitancy that I would disagree with about Matthew Stafford and what he did as a Lion. And I do think it would probably be a bit naive to think the Stafford trade package would have been the same as the Carson Wentz trade package. They opted for Wentz. Narrator's voice is what the Colts did. Now, again, they would have had to have given up, I think, a little bit more to get a Stafford versus a Wentz. But I think that even back then, like, to me, the Carson Wentz scar tissue and how the Philadelphia era played out was vastly different than how the Matthew Stafford era ended in the Lions.
Yeah.
It almost was like the Lions were like, we don't deserve you a little bit. Now, obviously, how the Lions have played out is
we need to do right by you and send you somewhere because we're not doing your talent justice.
Whereas the Eagles are like, dude, get the bleep out of here.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt with Wentz there. So, yes, if you want to go back 4 years ago, I thought it was unfair for the Colts to view Stafford in the light of, oh, man, look at the Lions. They just haven't had a lot of success. It's like, well, have you seen what's around him there?
They've had Calvin Johnson retire in the peak of his career because they couldn't get it done.
Name the wideouts he played with there.
Right.
So if you're able to provide a little bit more support, and certainly the Rams did that, I think you could have some team success.
And
so,
I don't think that's hindsight 2020 at all as far as Stafford versus Wentz. I would have taken Stafford 10 times out of 10 if you'd have given me that option.
Even for a bigger payout.
Yes, for a bigger payout.
Even for,
Proven
whatever the
track
trade
record.
package. Now, I guess, gosh, how old is Stafford? I was going to guess like 36.
Yeah, he's getting.
Is he that old? I mean, I still think he has a lot. I mean, I thought he played pretty good football this season. But I'll be curious.
37. He just turned 37 February 7th.
Okay. I'll be curious to see how that one plays out. Again, I almost think the Colts are resigned to the fact that you either figure Richardson out this year or you're back to square one.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically where you're at.
Quarterback. So I guess to fast forward it to this cycle, I don't think it would. I don't see the Colts all of a sudden viewing quarterback in that type of mode like they did with Rivers retiring, of course, after the 2020 season, moving into 2021.
Well, that's my thought from this offseason. Like, we're still trying to figure out the backup quarterback. Where's all these backup quarterbacks going to fall? That almost tells me that, similar to last season, is the Colts' storylines heading into the season is all around Anthony Richardson and what they have him in the former 4th overall pick at quarterback, because there's all this talk of go get Justin Fields, go get Daniel Jones, go do this and that. That's all well and good, but also those guys are going to be at the top of the backup quarterback, free agency pool. So you're going to be opening a bigger purse string to bring those guys into Indianapolis. And are they going to compete for the starting job? We've kind of debated, like, what does competition look like for Anthony Richardson? They've talked about competition, but does that mean they're actively going to push him for the starting position where QB1 is undetermined heading into training camp? Or is it one of those things where they're just hoping some guy gives him a little nudge, like, hey, get your blank together because you're QB1 for now, but things could change? That's almost why I fall into the category, and I talked about it last week, of maybe they don't opt for a Justin Fields and a Daniel Jones. Maybe instead they opt for the likes of like a Taylor Heineke or something like that, where it's a guy who's been there, done that from a veteran quarterback standpoint, but he's not replacing Anthony Richardson in training camp. If he is, things have really gone south if that's the case. So that's my curiosity too, is what exactly does the backup quarterback position for the Colts look like? Because if they're actively trying to give Anthony Richardson competition, does that mean they're going to the deep end of the water for these free agent quarterbacks like a Justin Fields and a Daniel Jones? Or are they going to play it safe and have a veteran quarterback, but maybe guys with not as much of a proven track record or as much money financially that you're tied up with?
Most impressive Pacers highlight from yesterday. Are you going Halliburton between the legs, lob to Obi Toppin? Or are you going Andrew Nemhard going out of bounds, one-handed, full court in stride to Halliburton for the layup?
I'm a sucker for like the N1 mixtapes and all that stuff, so give me the Halliburton topping between the legs alley-oop. That was nice. That was a nice post-All-Star break highlight.
Gosh, I love the Nembhard play.
I know. I do too, but I'm partial to the no-look alley-oop. That was pretty. I liked it.
Tyrese Halliburton, 29 points, 9 of 14, 12 assists, 1 turnover. That is a $200 million stat line from him yesterday. They handled business quite well. Again, reminder tonight, that is the Nuggets inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. TJ McConnell, a left ankle injury. We'll see about his availability. It is a back-to-back for the Pacers. Now, they had an earlier tip time yesterday, 5.
Yep.
And what was the most minutes? I'm trying to think. I mean, they didn't play stressful minutes. It's not like they had a ton of minutes, period, for their starters yesterday. That was a great. I mean, they had great balance.
Looks like the high man for minutes played was Miles Turner with 31, but Tyrese, Nembhard, and Pascal all clocked in at 30.
So yeah, that's good balance in terms of a back-to-back. And again, Denver not having a back-to-back. I believe this is the start of a road trip for Denver. They lost to the Lakers on Saturday night there. They had won 9 in a row. So we'll see about Nikola Jokic and company coming up here tomorrow night.
Yeah, good time to have Miles. I think Miles Turner's been a nice spark for this team. Obviously, I mean, that's not breaking news or anything, but him being out of that West Coast trip and now coming back, they found their stride scoring-wise. That the scoring drought that they were in heading into the All-Star break after that West Coast trip, that seems to have disappeared, at least these first 2 games. It's a small sample size, but I've liked what I've seen so far in these first 2 games.
Curious how many Pacers fans will walk into Gainbridge Fieldhouse tonight and be like, wait, Russell Westbrook and DeAndre Jordan play for the Nuggets?
Yeah. Russell Westbrook is one of those guys. He's turning, like, him and Kevin Durant have played for so many teams, like guys who are.
Westbrook stresses me out.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to get. There's days where he could do nothing and he can all of a sudden have a triple-double. You're like, what the hell? What's going on here? I don't know. And you said, what was the over-under for
Pacers? I don't know about
Jokic,
over-under, but
Jokic jerseys?
27.
Okay.
Will there be 27 Jokic jerseys? I went to a game a few years
Jake
ago.
to go to that? Jake will probably. He's a people watcher anyway. He'd tally that.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Let's put that on Jake's plate for today.
Yeah.
For
if
tonight.
he's going, he should.
7 o'clock. Pacers Nuggets. I'll be curious to see tonight or Wednesday what the NFL crowd looks like in there. You always get a little bit of an NFL flavor.
This is a big one. I would say
if you want to, you could go to Hinkle coming up on Wednesday night. Again, that is Butler and St. John's. 9 o'clock, Rick Pitino going for the Big East clinch there coming up this weekend.
I'd say if you're going tonight would be the ideal NFL thing because nothing's starting really yet for the NFL. Everybody's getting into town. Big matchup at Gainbridge. That's a perfect night for all the bigwigs in the NFL to be hanging out.
Trying to map out the rest of the week, Mark, and remind me on guests. Again, Rick Carlisle normal tomorrow. We'll also have Kaylin Kaler joining us tomorrow on the show. She's taking over for Peter King in the event at Sun King. This has been an annual combine. I believe the proceeds this year go to the Parks Alliance here in Indy. So you've seen this annual combine event. I think there's usually a Colts guest. We'll ask Kaylin about that when she joins us tomorrow live on Radio Row. She is also the one that had the very in-depth and eye-opening podcast series on the Daniel Muir story involving Robert Mathis. And I guess the religious group / cult maybe up in Logansport area, right?
Spiraled was the name of the podcast series.
Thank you. So she will ask her, I guess, any updates on that. She'll join us tomorrow. Dane Brugler, you said, is Thursday?
Yes, he's going to be Thursday, and he will also join in person. And then we've got lines out to the likes of Field Yates, Daniel Jeremiah, folks like that.
And, of course, Chris Ballard on Wednesday.
Chris Ballard on Wednesday.
That's what a little bit of Radio Row will look like for us here. Upcoming over the Convention Center each of the next 4 days. All right, Corbin, let's hit a morning checkdown here on this Monday. Corbin, let's hear from the head coaches. Let's start with the winning coach. It was the second half where he certainly rode a group that started off brilliantly on the defensive end of the floor there in that second half. It was no Mackenzie Mbako. It pretty much was an either-or with Umar Ballo and Malik Renew, but the likes of Luke Goody, Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, Miles Rice, they were the big four in spearheading one of the more impressive halves you've seen inside of Assembly Hall in quite some time. Mike Woodson after the 48-21 second half.
It's a great second half. I mean, I didn't play very many people off the bench. I kind of rode the seniors. We've been in a lot of close games over the last month and a half, man, and I just hadn't been able to get them over the hump. And tonight they refused to lose. I thought the second half we did everything from a defensive standpoint that we'd worked on these days that we had to practice, and it was a nice carryover. You know, we couldn't make a shot the first half. I thought we got some decent looks, but we just couldn't make them. And they made shots, and I thought the second half our defense really picked it up, and we were able to get stops, and then we started to make shots.
Was it an 18-2 run or something for Purdue to end the first half? And that tide was turning in Assembly Hall.
Yeah,
that was ugly.
I actually thought Indiana played pretty well the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Colvin hit those threes. They Purdue went on a nice run without Braden Smith, which was pretty impressive. Lawyer hit the big one there right before half. Up 12 at half. Indiana's booed off the floor. The second half, it totally changes. I thought it was the most fired up I've seen Matt Painter in a presser in a while. A couple S words that he threw in there. Don't think we have any of those necessarily in this clip, but you get the general gist from Matt Painter here on how frustrated he was postgame.
That's what's frustrating because, we've been able to show poise. We've been able to have composure, especially getting on the road, being able to play. Not always. I think it affects everybody at some point. And to say we lost our composure is an understatement.
Purdue entered Sunday. I think it was like 3:30. There's only about 350 teams in Division I in 2-point defense. I think they're like even worse than that in block percentage, and you felt that in the second half. Certainly Indiana lived in the paint, lived at the rim, and again, it was a massive second half. So final score ended up being 73-58, a beatdown in the final 20 minutes from Mike Woodson's bunch.
NBA Pacers starting strong out of the All-Star break, 129-111 winners over the LA Clippers. Second consecutive game with 7 Pacers in double figures. Again, Tyrese Halliburton putting up an All-Star performance right there. 29 points, 12 assists. Again, Miles Turner, a welcome sight back in the lineup, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists for him. He's starting to cook from three-point range, too. He's knocked down 4 three-pointers the other night. It is a big one. Again, they will need Miles Turner and a whole lot of scoring because the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, come to town. That is a 7 o'clock tip-off with coverage starting right here on the Fan at 6:30.
Just one more, right? Home game for them, Raptors on Wednesday. That concludes this home stand. A couple other items of note. Again, we'll get things started. St. Pete race coming up this weekend. That'll be Sunday. The IndyCar season will debut. We had Will Buxton, the new TV voice for Fox, on a few weeks ago. His energy was through the roof. Looking forward to that. That is noon from the streets of St. Pete's. Again, NFL Combine. You'll start to see a lot of personnel arrive in Indy coming up today, and then prospects later this week. Workouts will start a little bit later in the week. And the IHSA Girls State Finals, Mark, that is set in order. We had John Herrick on earlier today. He'll do the Class A game. That is Lafayette Central Catholic against Borden. 2A will be Rensselaer Central and South Knox. Your lone undefeated team is in 3A. That would be the Pirates, I believe, of Greensburg against the Fighting Chandler Harnishes in Norwell. And then the 4A, you had Warsaw, the Tigers of Warsaw, upset number 1 ranked Hamilton Southeastern. They will take on the legend that is Stephen Thomas, a great human, as he has the Lawrence North Wildcats in the 4A state final. So that'll come up Saturday there over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
You know a Pirate's favorite letter?
Oh, you're sounding like Jay Quarry, man.
What are you talking about?
Is it R?
No, it's the C's they love.
Oh, that's so pathetic.
What are you talking about? That was gold right there on this Monday morning.
It's the most dad joke.
If you had a rum runner in you would have cackled like crazy. If we were on the beaches of Florida, you'd have loved that joke.
Well, yeah. Instead, I'm feeling the gut intruding this desk here at 9:25 on a Monday morning. That is Mark Dykton, the lovely jokes there. He'll be at Crackers coming up Tuesday night for open mic night. Kevin Bowen, Corbin Lingenfelter, thanks for spending this Monday morning with us right here on The Fan. Well, thanks for spending this Monday with us, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, and Corbin Lingenfelter. Yeah, we'll be over at the Combine coming up the rest of this week. I differ from a lot of my media colleagues. I actually look forward to it. It's a change of pace, probably because we actually are doing remote shows, which we don't do a whole lot of. And you just get guests that you don't typically have on. We don't get to have on a lot of these guests. I mean, Mark, remember a couple years ago we had Nick Sirianni on?
Yeah.
You know,
That was a good one. That was a reach out, and the Eagles are more than happy to oblige. He said, absolutely, he'll come on.
So looking forward to just some of those types of conversations. Again, Chris Ballard going to be with us Wednesday at 8. I mentioned to you a little bit earlier in the show, I had the Freckled Finn down in Anna Maria Island, a nice raucous USA chant. Very reminiscent of like the under 8 timeout at Assembly Hall. I felt like I'd created that type of atmosphere after the second goal for the United States. And I think Maddie was actually not embarrassed by me.
That's good, because sometimes you come home from Florida from the Freckled Finn and you have to go see a physician for something, but this visit, not so much. Yeah,
I think if I would have spent an extra second or two in that bathroom, I think those walls would have created that for me here. I love Sean McDonough's play-by-play. I think the versatility across multiple sports is such a special talent.
Oh, yeah.
Frankly. But I thought he had a line in the third period that I mentioned to you earlier, and I think it's what kind of separates hockey. And I'm not a hockey guy. You know, I don't watch regular season hockey on a very religious basis at all. But he said it late in the third period as, you know, it was clear that overtime was on the horizon of every bouncing puck causes anxiety for somebody. And he's saying that in the run of play. And he said that, and it just stood out to me so much. I'm like, what other sport has that?
Yeah, none really.
I mean, I think like playoff baseball, you get the climactic reactions of like the crowd rising with 2 strikes and the silence before the crack of the bat. Like if it's a 1-run game, but
if there's a guy on second or something like that, yeah, there's a little more anticipation. Ooh, this could be it, or something like a bloop single could do it.
Hockey, I just feel like it's different because it's both teams theoretically at play at the same time. Of you can have the bouncing puck on one end of your ice, and then 3 seconds later, I'm freaking out on the other end.
A line change could do enormous,
right. I mean, obviously, when you get 5-on-4s or things like that, penalties create that. But I thought that was such a great line of like, soccer, sure, it's low scoring like hockey, but the field's too long for it to happen on a super frequent basis.
Breakaways in soccer just don't happen at the frequency they could happen in hockey.
So I thought that was such a great line from him, and I'm like, man, I should probably like hockey more than I do.
Yeah, but not having a pro team in town kind of stinks, and Blackhawks are kind of going through a transition phase as well. But there was nothing better when the Blackhawks were in their mini dynasty and everything like that. Like, I was locked in. There was nothing more exciting than playoff hockey, and I still feel that too. Even if you don't have a horse in the race, playoff hockey is some of the most exhilarating and exciting entertainment you can have in postseason sports, and the Four Nations delivered it. So I think the NHL got everything they bargained for when they made this decision. It could not have gone better. You got the USA-Canada in the championship round. You had a heated semifinal round between those two, so there's already anticipation building. And then you saw the ratings that people bought in, whether this was just a, cheer for your country situation or this was, people were actually invested in this. The ratings were unbelievable. It was like 15 million people watched Thursday's championship game. I mean,
that is a huge number.
Spectacular.
For hockey.
Yeah.
I mean, quote unquote, an exhibition, right? I mean, not even what you're going to get in the Olympics. And the Winter Olympics are like a year from now, right?
Correct.
So we're going to get this pretty quickly.
Yes.
Here coming up. Italy, is that right?
Yes. A place in Italy I can't pronounce, unsurprisingly.
Oh, okay. So it's not Rome?
No, I thought I looked it up, and it was like, I don't know how. Yeah, it's not like Milan.
What do I feel like it was like Torino? Is that right? Is that where the recent?
Maybe I can't pronounce that, though.
No, I think that was like the not recent, but whatever, in the last 20, 30 years. That's where the Winter Olympics were. But the NHL players will be
Milano Cortina.
Say it again.
Milano Cortina. Is that correct? That was a very American way to say it.
Well, that sounded good to me.
Milano Cortina. There's actually more to Cortina. It's De Empezao.
Stop into Ioria's or Iosas here after the show.
The motto for the Winter Olympics in 2026, it's your vibe. That sounds like something like a dad would say on TikTok or something like that to try to sound cool. Subscribe. It's your vibe.
Yeah, that does sound like
They need to bring that
yeah.
to the drawing board again.
Stick with the joke. Stick with the pirate joke, and don't go there on TikTok.
People like that one. People thought that joke was very well done. I put a kink in the armor. Right
So
there.
the Dusty May buyout's only $7.5 million.
Yeah, that's not as much as I thought it would be with a contract extension.
For what it's worth, he gave a quote to Matt Norlander from CBS Sports. This was kind of a Friday news dump. I guess it was right before they played Michigan State on Friday. But the quote to Matt Norlander, ESPN college basketball guy, for those unfamiliar with him, he wrote this. The larger question, despite the new agreement, is Indiana now fully off the table? Dusty's quote, I think it makes it obvious I'm staying at Michigan. May told CBS Sports. I really wasn't interested in leveraging or negotiating. I was talking to my brother-in-law about this yesterday. I would be fascinated. And I think the Bill, did you see like that Bill Self Oklahoma State rumor from over the weekend of like he was holed up at a golf course in Stillwater and pondering whether he's taking the Oklahoma State job? I would pay to like hear a tell-all from Scott Dolson in how he is going about this coaching search. Like the secrecy of it, who you trust, who you're contacting. Like there are probably some boosters at Indiana that are like, wait a minute, I'm like paying for a prominent player to come to the program. I want information.
Right. Well, we had Zach Osterman on last week, and I said, can you fill us in? Because it's been kind of like a quiet period all of a sudden for a team going
Which
through
isn't shocking. I mean, when you think about it, like...
Right, but I feel like we were moving and shaking with names and all that. Oh, let's keep an eye on this guy. Let's look at this guy. Let's get a little more information. And all of a sudden, it's just nothing.
Right. And
where are
all
we
these
at here?
coaches, if you are whatever, if you are... let's just throw out a name, Bruce Pearl. I mean, obviously, you're going to ride it out with Auburn. You're one of the best teams in college basketball right now. You don't see guys don't leave their college basketball teams like Brian Kelly's leaving Notre Dame when they have a chance to make the playoff. Like that just doesn't happen in the college basketball world. Obviously, their season is a lot more condensed when you get into the tournament format, but
that depends where his family wants to go.
I am fascinated though by a head coaching search and the secrecy about it. And I mean, what private planes are you taking? Do you freak out about the plane trackers of the world? Where are you meeting with these people? Are you meeting in, I want to say they met with Kurt Cignetti, I think in like Indianapolis, not to have the intel of like, hey, we're in whatever city JMU is, or we're Bloomington, obviously, from a plane tracking standpoint. Like, all of that just fascinates me.
There's a lot of flights coming into Indianapolis this week with Combine. Maybe you sneak someone in and
like if some people were tracking like this Bloomington flight to South Bend, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. Like, hey, Notre Dame is a home game. Brad Stevens is coming in to watch Brady. All of a sudden, or is this just like a Cook medical plane just flying to South Bend? I mean, again, is a Cook airplane something that Dolson's using? Are you using your, university airplanes, or how are you going about that aspect to it?
Maybe the smoke and mirrors wasn't Brad Stevens at the Notre Dame game. It was Micah Shrewsbury.
Hey, now, big win for the Irish on Saturday.
Yeah, that's what it is. I do think it is a good thing, though, that Brad Stevens and Dusty May are kind of off the table now. Because, like I said, it's a hard reset for Bloomington.
So Dusty's
fans.
off $7.5 million.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Why would you sign that deal if you're not committing to stay with Michigan? Are you just hoping to up the monetary value and all that stuff? I don't know.
You know what? We played that audio from him a couple weeks ago, and he certainly leveraged that answer into a nice payday.
Yeah.
Remember, we
thought
were
that was what he was
it.
doing.
Is this legit interest in Indiana, or is this the agent has coached him up to answer it in a very respectful manner, but also answer it with a little bit of, oh boy, Michigan fans, is that uneasy? So Dusty May, a new extension. Yeah, again, on the Indiana front, I just think it'll relatively be quiet for the next couple weeks.
Yeah. They're going to reset. They're going to, get their coaching search in order again. They're going to revamp their short list, and we'll see where it goes from there. But, yeah, I mean, the two pie-in-the-sky candidates off the board now. I think a little more reality sets in for IU fans and whatnot. So I'll be curious to see who if we are tracking planes and whatnot, where are we going here? What's the next? What do IU fans want now? Now that Dusty May and Brad Stevens are off the table, is there like a more logical move there for them?
Corbin, you've got that audio from Matt Painter, right? He kind of gave a long answer about the Indiana job. He was asked about that, I think, late in yesterday's presser. Let's play that on the other side. We'll continue sprinkling a little bit of Combine as that begins here this week in Indianapolis, and we'll play some of that Matt Painter audio coming up to close it out one final time. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter here on a Monday.
Kevin adding to the waistline this Monday morning on the Fan Morning Show.
Oh, but this is healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy. Thank you to our friends at Cluster Chuck.
Shout out.
You got a little tachos action, Corbin? Excellent.
Yes, I did.
Excellent. The FAN promo code. So that's just FAN, FAN promo code. $5 off, order of 25 or more. So thank you to Cluster Truck for that.
I went club sandwich at 9:45 in the morning. James Boyd last week did like cheeseburger.
Yeah, he went burger, I think, a couple weeks ago as well. Yeah,
That's
I think he
excellent.
still has the metabolism that I just don't have.
Oh, yeah.
Long gone. I went chicken Caesar wrap. I love it. I think it's excellent. It's one
It
of
is
my favorites.
outstanding.
So thank you to Cluster Truck. Again, FAN, the promo code there for you. Want to play this Matt Painter audio. He was very expansive. I thought a little ranty in his description about the Indiana job when asked about it post-game yesterday. We'll play that audio, but for those that have missed it, just some, and again, I guess we'll give you the final scene, if you will, first. Everyone is safe. That's the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
But, Mark, I continue to see images from this IU Indy men's basketball team bus that caught on fire. They did make it back safe to campus on a new bus. I mean, it is horrifying. I mean, the bus is fried. You described it earlier as it looked like a bus you maybe would have seen like in Southern California during those wildfires. That is a sad but probably an accurate way to describe it. Paul Casaro and the entire team and staff members did make it off the bus safely, but it sounded like a lot of their belongings were unfortunately ruined.
Yeah, I mean, there's some live video of like a driver, an onlooker pulled over and took video of the car, like the bus as it's engulfed in flames. And it does look like it's coming from the rear. So whether that was like a gas line issue or what exactly happened, I don't know. But I mean, yeah, there was no jokes about it. That car was torched. I mean, there was nothing left. So thank God everyone made it out safe and sound. Some equipment and whatnot was lost, but that's the least of the concerns.
Certainly. So, boy, and it's just a reminder of, again, there's 350 teams in college basketball, and obviously at the Division II and III and NAIA level, this is their transportation, mostly. I mean, it's not the private plane life that the Indiana and the Purdues and the Notre Dames, et cetera, have on a frequent basis. So the bus life is real. And boy, that is just a scary, scary image.
With as often as like these teams travel, whether you're Division I or wherever, it is wild to think that much travel happens and like so few of these incidents do happen. But I mean,
you're getting on a bus borderline 100 times a year.
Yeah.
You think about all the trips, whatever, busing from hotel to
multiple highways all over the place, cross country, wherever.
So again, everyone safe. That's the most important aspect. But just I can only imagine how horrifying that was for Paul Casaro and his team coming back from Northern Kentucky. Corbin, let's cue up this audio. It's a long answer from Matt Painter. There's actually two answers in here. Did you have to go bleep button a couple times?
Yes, I did.
A little bleep button action here. This is Matt Painter yesterday when asked about the Indiana job.
It's like anything. Like, you got to get a good person. You got to get a good coach. You got to get a guy to understand it. They've had a lot of turnover, obviously. I think you got to look at some of the common denominators here more than anything. I think that's an important piece right here. Like, don't beat yourself. Don't beat yourself. Like, let's support somebody. I got to try that out for once every now and then. Goes wrong, like whatever. You think Purdue fans are happy about what just happened? See, a fan base isn't the people that tweet. A fan base is the people when you're bleeding, they support you. Like they jump in and off, they jump on and off things here way too much. Like, support your coach, man. Support your players. Don't tweet negative things about them. Like, be supportive. Like, see how that works for you. But they build them up, like, and they overdo things. Like, quit overdoing. Just accurately, like, talk about what's actually happened. Like, don't, like, get, like, recruits and, like, that's Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. Then they come out here. Well, they're not Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. They're good college players.
So that was Matt Painter.
How many games Michael Jordan lost? That's what I thought of it immediately.
He had a, it was a long answer. That general gist, the end of it right there, he kind of repeated on a couple of different occasions, Mark, and I kind of walked away with my general thought that I think Indiana has struggled with here recently is you're ultimately putting a puzzle together. And I found it ironic when Indiana made that comeback yesterday, their five-star, I don't think arguably, probably their best shooter, him or Luke Goody, a guy that's been in double figures 6 out of the last 7 games. He's on the bench for that entire second half. But it was guys that were giving it on the defensive end of the floor. that you ultimately stuck with. It was probably the least heralded 5-man grouping we've seen, just in terms of recruiting rankings or NIL or all of that. That was out on the floor. I think that is probably a reminder that Matt Painter indirectly said in referencing, hey, expectations, let's not crown everybody, MJ, Pippen, et cetera, et cetera. That aspect I agree with. I do think there's one item that I disagreed with, but just your overall thoughts on Painter's answer.
I mean, it almost seems like just a guy who's not used to being in this scenario, and he's just trying to find some answers at the moment with, we haven't really seen this late season struggle for the Purdue Boilermakers on Matt Painter's watch. So it's a frustration that's building up. I think on both sides of the ball, we've discussed it. Offensively, it's just not there either. The scoring drought has been kind of crazy these 4 games, and then he's seen defensive lapses as well. And it's one of those games where you should have had him. Like, the game was in your favor heading into halftime. You had all the momentum. Assembly Hall was not happy. They were restless and everything like that. They were giving every reason to jump on Mike Woodson and crew coming out of the second half. And then just his team took the foot off the gas. And I don't know the last time that's happened for a Matt Painter-led crew where they let one get away from them. And it's one that they normally don't, and it was against your arch rival.
The one aspect of that answer that I would maybe push back a little bit against, it's the general, and I get there's a fine line. There's a very fine line with this. How passionate your fan base is, and how supportive that can be, and how demoralizing, for lack of a better term, it can also be.
Disgruntling or whatever.
And that's what you get in the social media noise.
Yeah.
And again, there is a very fine line in that. I would argue Indiana is easily one of the most active fan bases on social media.
Without question. Yeah.
But they're also one of the most passionate. And it's a huge reason. Like, if you look at their general revenue, I mean, again, they have a season. It's largely one to forget, and that building was all but full yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't grow on trees. A lot of college basketball programs would kill for that. And
look at the team you root for in college basketball. We can lay out in a couple rows.
It's not like Notre Dame has got a full building night in and night out. So just a pure ticket revenue, a pure we care about our program. Indiana's right up there with any other.
It's like dying for success.
Right. And again, there's a fine line in like, hey, here I am attacking a player on social media. Obviously, that's a line that I don't agree with.
Right.
But Indiana's general massive support for their basketball program, I could not agree more with it. I mean, that environment yesterday was lively. It was raucous. Now, yeah, you have the boo birds, but this is where I struggle with a fan. A fan is a fan.
Right.
I mean, that is fandom. So I think holding your program to a standard that is a high one, that is one that I think should be held to, I think that's healthy, and I think that's acceptable. And I think, frankly, in today's college athletics, it's okay to have that. I think the day and age of college athletics has changed to where some of the criticism, again, without crossing the line, is okay. Like, you should be able to have those expectations play out. I don't think boo birds are the end of the world. I mean, you're looking out there in Indiana, by all accounts, that roster is like nearly a $5 million roster?
Yep.
So, to me, a little bit of accountability is not the end of the world. So, I that part of the answer of it's all got to be support. And this kind of gets into Mike Woodson of, I can't believe these ex-players are criticizing us. Well, they want the standard of the program to be held at a higher level.
It comes with the job.
Yeah, it comes with, honestly, putting on the front of the Indiana jersey. And I think that is okay in making sure you obviously aren't crossing the line of attacking someone on a personal
the people that
basis.
do that, obviously, it's a very small fraction on social media. You always wonder how big that scope actually is. But for the most part, fans just want to see success. They've been that IU fan base has been longing for sustained success for a long period of time. They haven't had it. So it's growing frustrations. Now you're seeing Mike Woodson's on his way out, so there's more upheaval about who's going to be the next head coach. They just want some success. And that fan base, as rabid as they are, considering how this season has gone, can you imagine if they get some sustained success going, what that place is going to be doing in Falls and Bloomington for a couple seasons in a row? It'd be electric.
Yeah, and Brandon, I'm glad he brought this up. I was chatting with Brandon yesterday. It does seem like if you don't get this hire right, I think the national perspective on the Indiana job does start to change.
The blue blood.
Yeah, I've been very adamant that I still think, I laugh when the national media acts like it's not a great job or it's lost a lot of its luster. But I think if you were to miss on the hire potentially a third straight time, because I isolate Tom Crean into a different animal. Like, the program was in such shambles when he took over with where Kelvin Sampson had it, that to me, that was just different expectations. But a miss on Archie, a miss on Mike Woodson, and then theoretically this miss would be more of a normal college basketball hire, assuming that's the route they go, and not go with, hey, this dude played for our program 40 years ago and he's been a mediocre NBA coach, let's hire him. That, I do think, is heavily at stake with this job of, you're going to continue to get a generation away from 87, 81, 76.
You start transitioning to a football school, which is rare to hear from Indiana.
I mean, in this state, you look in the last 20 years, Butler's done it multiple times deeper in the tournament. Notre Dame's done it multiple times deeper in the tournament than Indiana. Purdue, obviously, has done it as well. So that starts to become more and more apparent to people that are not only of our age, Mark, but, younger than that. Right. I mean, you were born in what year?
85.
So you were 2 years old when the first title happened, and you've got 3 kids. I was born.
Don't remind me. No, yeah.
I've got 2 kids and was born 2 years after the last title. So, and again, not even that. 93, the Final Four, or 92, whatever it was, and then obviously 02, that run. I mean, that's really it. When you look at it from if they miss the tournament this year, I think it'll be more missed tournaments than made tournaments in the last 20 years. So, the Painter answer, I think there were some points where I nodded my head, but I do think the general passion for hashtag IUBB, it's real. And it doesn't happen at a lot of places. And I think ultimately that's a healthy thing. I get that there's a fine line, but I think ultimately that is a healthy thing.
That is why this job is attractive, because, again, if you win there, you're immortalized. You're never paying for a meal in Bloomington the rest of your life. So there's that appeal that
I would argue a successful Indiana basketball coach is the most well-known figure in the state.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're building statues. You're getting
maybe not with Caitlin Clark.
You're getting 40-year-old chairs saved in storage units. You live forever there. So
was that the real chair?
I don't know. I think so. Wouldn't surprise me. But it could just have been like a chair that got lost. Like, remember when you stacked the chairs at the end of the school year? Did they just put that one aside?
All
that
right,
one...
after lunch, time to stack the chairs.
Put saran wrap on that one. That one's special. It's coach's chair.
Thank you to John Herrick. He joined us earlier. Mark, tomorrow we'll be over at the Combine. Rick Carlisle at 8.
Kalen Kaler as well to join us later in the show as well. Get some NFL Combine talk. Cannot wait.
So we'll be over there coming up tomorrow. Just to map out the rest of the week, each of our shows will have, I would say, one of the prominent Colts voices. John will have Lou Anarumo coming up tomorrow, new defensive coordinator. I believe that's around 5 o'clock. We will have Chris Ballard on around 8 o'clock on Wednesday. And Jake will have Shane Steichen joining him on Wednesday. I believe that's in the 2 o'clock hour. Corbin Lingenfelter, thank you, sir. Mark Dykton, thank you as well. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great start to your week. Thanks for tuning in to the Fan Morning Show right here on a Monday.